A young boy, cursed with the power of regeneration, becomes the most feared monster the world has ever seen. But can Japan's strongest hunter, Prime Minister Judo, stop him before it's too late? Watch as the ultimate battle between man and monster unfolds in a world where hunters reign supreme and power means everything. Who will emerge victorious in this brutal clash for survival? Find out in our epic breakdown of Kang Ji-hyung's relentless rise to power. 10 years ago, gates abruptly opened up all over the world. Through these gates, monsters started pouring out. Monstrous beasts, humanoid devils, and even ghostly dragons. Thankfully, on the human side, people known as the Awakens started appearing. These individuals began exhibiting supernatural powers, whether it was magic, martial arts, or other superhuman abilities. These Awakened became the hunters who hunted down the monsters. But for our protagonist, Kang Ji-hyung, none of this matters. A young teen, just minding his own business, finds his life shattered when a large block of diamond slams into his face, knocking him back into the desks and chairs of the classroom. Blood pours from Ji-hyung's mouth and head, staining the floor. 3 other students stand over him, a brown-haired teen smirking down at him called Thor, another, chewing gum, known as Sandman, and the leader, a white-haired teen with a diamond levitating above his arm, called Crystal. Crystal calls Ji-hyung a worm and orders him to squirm. In this awakened specialization high school, Ji-hyung is nothing but a loser. His only ability? Regeneration, supposedly an S-rank power. Unluckily for Ji-hyung, his version of regeneration is a curse. Every time he heals, it hurts like hell. As his skull tries to repair itself, he screams in agony, flailing on the ground, while his bullies laugh at him. Once he heals, there's no evidence of the attack, no proof of the bullying left behind. He has no choice but to endure. Even the teachers and the police do nothing.
Why?
Because S-class individuals like his bullies receive special treatment from the government. Thor, Sandman, and Crystal, with their powers over diamonds, electricity, and earth, are all S-class elites. After school, Ji-hyung heads home to the small restaurant his mom runs. She greets him warmly, giving him food. His mom is the only reason he continues to go to that high school despite everything. His dad died when Ji-hyung was 5, leaving his mom to handle the failing restaurant and provide for them. So even when she asks how school is, Ji-hyung smiles and lies. He tells her everything is fine. But one day, everything changes. On the 15th of the month, his mother's birthday, Ji-hyung's life comes crashing down. He stares in shock at his mother's unconscious body in the hospital. She's covered in bandages, a neck brace supporting her head, connected to oxygen. She had been brutally beaten, and now, she's in a vegetative state. The government officials try to explain that it was an accident, but Ji-hyung knows better. Crystal and his friends came to their small restaurant that day. Crystal, thinking Ji-hyung's mom was attractive, tried to flirt with her. But when she accidentally swiped his phone off the table, cracking its screen, Crystal's power erupted in anger. Diamonds speared through the ground, lifting Ji-hyung's mom into the air.
An accident? No.
It was anything but that. Ji-hyung's face contorts in rage as blood drips from his nose, his teeth gritting so hard they crack and shatter. He grabs his neck, clawing at his skin, unable to contain the fury boiling within. His mother's birthday cake, left behind on the floor, is bathed in his blood. That night, in the mountains outside the city, the 3 bullies are hanging out, messing with their powers. Thor expresses some guilt, but Crystal brushes it off. They're young, protected by the law, and as awakened individuals, they have special privileges. Suddenly, from a distance, a voice calls out, Ji-hyung. His eyes, filled with fury, glare at the bullies as he demands to know why they hurt his mom. Crystal recognizes him and mocks him, complimenting his mother's youthful appearance. Tears and snot run down Ji-hyung's face as he charges at them. Crystal lifts his hand, summoning a diamond spear that shoots straight through Ji-hyung's chest. Blood explodes everywhere as Ji-hyung pulls the spear out. His regeneration kicks in, healing the wound, but the pain rips through him as he writhes in agony. Despite the torment, he's ready to attack again. But Crystal has hundreds of diamond spears at his disposal now. With a flick of his finger, the spears rain down on Ji-hyun. Pinned to the ground like a human pincushion, his anger only grows. Crawling through the pain, he refuses to give in. Amused by Ji-hyun's persistence, Crystal orders Thor to finish him off. A bolt of lightning crashes down from the heavens, striking Ji-hyun where he stands. Smoldering, barely able to move, Ji-hyun still crawls toward them. Furious, Crystal covers his fists in diamond and pummels Ji-hyun's body, smashing down over and over again. Ji-hyun, grabbing a crystal spike, impales his own throat, his mind flashing to memories of his mother just before he dies. But Ji-hyun doesn't stay dead. The relentless cycle continues, his regeneration saving him, the pain growing worse each time. As Ji-hyun fights through his agony, his hatred burns brighter. And then, a realization hits him. This helplessness, this endless torment, is how his mother must feel. With newfound resolve, Ji-hyun grits his teeth and punches his way out of his diamond prison. Over time, as he regenerates and breaks his own body, he becomes stronger. His skeletal structure hardens. 5 long years pass. 5 years of nothing but pain and fury. A long time later, the mountains on the outskirts of the city are still as peaceful as ever. Meanwhile, the television in the city broadcasts an interview with some famous S-rank hunters. The interviewer even compliments his 3 guests, who are famous for their kindness and volunteer work. The guests explain that they feel joy whenever they help those in need, and they still feel that way. These 3 guests, Ji-hyun's former bullies, had now graduated and were working as S-class hunters, the best of the best. As for the next question, the interviewer asks them about an incident in their past when they hurt a civilian 5 years ago due to an ability outrage. The leader of the 3 hunters holds his head in grief as tears start flowing down his cheeks. He narrates how, when they were still students, he couldn't control his abilities well and accidentally hurt his friend's mom. He apologized to his friend, but he couldn't reach him since then. He was about to apologize again in front of the camera when the door to the interview area suddenly gets blown in, and it rockets right toward the hunters. Thankfully, Crystal manages to deflect the door with his arms, now reinforced with diamonds. The audience watching the interview scatters and shouts as a monster silhouette can be seen standing by the broken entrance. With every step of the monster, the floors break. Crystal warily watches the imposing figure approaching them when, in an instant, a fist suddenly flies to his face. In a flashback, we once again see Ji-hyun in his dining cocoon, relentlessly and undyingly punching the diamond above him. He has no idea how much time has passed. Is it a few months? A few years? He will never know. The diamonds before him don't even show a scratch from all his punches, but there is one thing he noticed. His regenerative ability was different from others. The continued injuries triggered excessive regeneration, and he regenerated into a stronger person than before. Looking at his knuckles, he can see bones peeking through them. His exoskeleton was starting to come out. Inside that grave for 5 years, Ji-hyun's whole body struggled. He used his feet, his back, and even his head. For 5 years, he destroyed his entire body and regenerated. He only felt pain. His blood splattered, his flesh ripped, his bones broke. The pain was his whole life. And when he regenerated, the pain was worse than death. Yet, Ji-hyun continued on for 5 years until a crack formed. Back in the present, Crystal's face gets bludgeoned by a heavy skeletal fist, and he is flung back into the wall, crashing into it. His 2 sidekicks, Thor and Sandman, couldn't fathom what just happened or who this person was standing before them. A person looking more like a demon than a human, with an exoskeleton all over him, and even half his face masked with a skull. Ji-hyun recalls the last words these bullies told him 5 years ago when they said he could try murdering them if he ever managed to escape his prison. Well, now Ji-hyun's rage is as fresh as ever, and he warns them that he finally got out. However, the bullies couldn't even remember this last interaction with Ji-hyun, let alone connect their weak classmate from the past to this imposing monster before them. They stare at each other in confusion, while Crystal gets back up behind them. He orders them to just kill the guy, so Thor quickly summons a flash of lightning to strike the enemy. The resulting bolt of electricity causes a massive explosion of power and debris, but Ji-hyun endures the attack. Lightning still crackles all over his body, but he grins through it and charges at Thor. Ji-hyun lunges at Thor with his fists, using the blade-like bone protruding from his forearm to spear through Thor. The sharp weapon cuts through Thor's neck, and his decapitated head flies through the air, still showing a shocked expression. Crystal and Sandman are stunned by this shocking turn of events and can't even move as their friend's blood splatters over them. A few seconds later, after Thor's body hits the ground, Sandman finally manages to react. He sends his power toward Ji-hyun, as pieces of rock, sand, and dirt converge and wrap around Ji-hyun, imprisoning and crushing him in a ball of earth. Ji-hyun grits his teeth once more, and in a counterattack, his prison explodes into 1,000,000 tiny pieces. In an instant, his fist holds Sandman by the jaw, popping the bubble gum he seems to have been chewing for 5 years. Sandman's mind goes into alarm at what is about to happen next as Ji-hyun tears off his jaw. Sandman falls to the ground, clutching his brutalized face, while Ji-hyun lifts his sword arm to put him out of his misery. The blade slams into Sandman, finally ending his suffering. Crystal, now behind Ji-hyun with his fists ready to strike, prepares to attack. Ji-hyun turns to face him, but this only allows Crystal's diamond-laden fist to crash into Ji-hyun's face. Unlike before, the skull encasing Ji-hyun's face manages to pierce through Crystal's defenses. His diamond fists now have cracks running through them. Seeing this tragedy, Crystal lifts his hand, and countless diamond spears appear. Unlike when they were kids, when the spears just surrounded Ji-hyun, this time the spears are so large and numerous that they surround the whole building. Crystal brings down his finger, and the innumerable spears come crashing down and converge on Ji-hyun, making him a human pincushion once more. Crystal stares at Ji-hyun's mangled corpse, but to his horror, the spikes spearing through Ji-hyun's body start to shake as he tries to stand again. Blood is pouring and dripping from his wounds, but this just makes Ji-hyun look that much more menacing. Not only does he now look like a skeletal demon, but now he's bathed in blood and glaring menacingly at Crystal. Crystal realizes that this isn't over yet and encases his whole body in protective diamond armor. His fists become heavy diamond sledgehammers, and he starts pummeling Ji-hyun. With every punch, both bone and diamond crack, and blood splatters all over. Crystal unleashes a combo of punches at Ji-hyun, ending with a devastating blow to the head. However, just like back when they were teenagers, Ji-hyun catches his fists with his mouth. He bites down on the diamond fist, and unlike before, when Ji-hyun's teeth shattered, this time it is Crystal's arm that shatters. Crystal is horrified, realizing that he is no longer invulnerable to the monster before him. Ji-hyun bites down hard on the arm and quickly punches his skeletal sword through Crystal's chest. Crystal tries to move away, but Ji-hyun is still biting through his fist, and Crystal can only scream in pain from both attacks. In a desperate attempt to escape, Crystal touches the floor and summons a large stalagmite of diamond to sprout and spear through Ji-hyun, dragging him into the air. But Ji-hyun's bite on his arm is still so strong that Crystal is forced to cut off his own arm. Holding his now missing arm, Crystal hobbles away from the scene. Unfortunately for him, a diamond spike suddenly spears through him, forcing him to fall. Ji-hyun had thrown one of Crystal's own spears at him. Ji-hyun menacingly walks toward him, with Crystal screaming at the top of his lungs for him to stop. Of course, Ji-hyun pays him no mind and stabs Crystal with the myriad diamond spikes he had created. Crystal now looks like a pincushion. Weakly, he asks the monster before him who he is. In response, Ji-hyun grabs hold of the skull covering half of his face and painfully peels it off. Crystal can finally see his whole face, and his mind immediately recalls who this person is. It was the weakling they tortured when they were teens and relentlessly called Worm. Half of Ji-hyun's face might now be scarred underneath the skull mask, but this person is clearly him. Ji-hyun doesn't respond to the insult, but simply raises his fists and strikes Crystal once more. He then grabs him by the throat and rams his skeletal sword through Crystal's mouth, and out the back of his head. Ji-hyun watches as the life slowly disappears from Crystal's eyes. After finally exacting his revenge, the rage seeps out of Ji-hyun, and he tiredly stands up. He surveys his surroundings and sees the 3 brutalized corpses of his former bullies, all lying in pools of their own blood. The whole auditorium has been destroyed in their fight, and Ji-hyun is the only one left alive. The only movement he can see is his own reflection in the pools of blood. Above him, a gray sky peeks through the ruins of the building, and a torrent of rain starts to fall. Ji-hyun falls to his knees, looks up at the rain, and feels the water running over him. He releases a blood-curdling scream and starts to cry, realizing that after 5 years of nothing but mindless pain, he doesn't know what to do next. A little while later, Ji-hyun is sitting in a hospital with a warm blanket covering him. He stares at the prone figure lying on the hospital bed and can't believe that his mother is still alive. Somewhere, under a clear blue sky in the middle of the forest, there flickers a gate to another world. Inside this portal is a dark green cave where a group of hunters is just finishing up a monster hunt. The 4 men commend the girl in their group, as it was her first time going that deep into the gate, and yet she still contributed greatly to the team. The girl bashfully thanks her comrades for looking out for her. However, her gratitude quickly turns to horror when she notices the 4 men now encircling her, their expressions dark and their eyes filled with sinister intent. One of the men smirks, restraining her hands as he caresses her face. He tells her that they are far more grateful for Herb accompanying them, reminding her that no one will know what happens inside the gate. The girl begins shaking in terror. The muscular man was about to lick her face when, all of a sudden, his head is sliced clean off and rolls to the ground. The other men are horrified by the sudden attack. They frantically look around, trying to spot their attacker. Meanwhile, the girl is stunned as her savior steps forward, a humanoid figure, encased in an exoskeleton, embodying the terrifying name of a true monster hunter. The 3 remaining male hunters quickly respond to the presence of the monster, burying him with a barrage of attacks. One of them summons multiple fireballs, while another conjures a spear of darkness, and the last brandishes a katana. Fire and dark magic explode violently, striking Ji-hyun, but the attacks barely scratch his exoskeleton. The samurai charges and stabs his katana into Ji-hyun's chest, but to his horror, the katana shatters on impact. In a single swift counterattack, Ji-hyun destroys the samurai. The 2 remaining hunters, now fully gripped by fear, cannot fathom how such a powerful monster exists within the gate. Ji-hyun, unfazed, lazily swings his sword, decapitating both men in one strike, leaving only the girl alive. The girl, shaking and crying in fear, looks up at the monster who had just saved her. She wipes her tears away and thanks him, her voice trembling with emotion. However, her gratitude is abruptly cut short as her head is swiftly sliced off by Ji-hyun. He had attacked once more, mercilessly ending her life. But why did he do this? To answer that question, we must go back to a few days ago. Ji-hyun was still crying in the auditorium, standing over the bodies of those he had murdered. Suddenly, a voice spoke to him from afar. "What you did was amazing," the voice said. "How do you feel now that you've gotten your revenge?" The voice belonged to a blonde-haired woman standing by the door. Ji-hyun asked, "Who are you?" The woman introduced herself as Sim Jian, South Korea's Hunter Association head. Ji-hyun demanded to know how she knew about him, and her response shocked him. "I've been watching you ever since the incident 5 years ago," she explained. Realizing she was talking about his mother, Ji-hyun's rage surged again, and he charged at her. The auditorium exploded with force as he barreled toward her, ready to strike her down. Just before his attack landed, she spoke calmly, "I can save your mother." Those words froze Ji-hyun's fist in midair. The shockwave of his halted attack sent debris and rubble flying through the corridor. He hesitated, his rage momentarily held back, and he asked, "What do you mean?" Sim Jian clarified, "I can wake your comatose mother. After all, I am the only S-rank healer in the world." Ji-hyun, having learned from his past mistakes, wasn't ready to trust her easily. "How do I know I can trust you?" he asked. Sim Jian laughed mirthlessly and said, "You don't have to take my word for it. I was the one keeping your mother alive while you were trapped beneath the earth for 5 years." Thinking it over, Ji-hyung asks her what she wants with him. Jian smiles and tells him that there is currently a problem with the world situation. The hunters that sprouted all over different countries are now too strong. Most military forces are no match for hunters, and there are even hunters stronger than nuclear forces. Thanks to these strong hunters, the monsters inside the gates have mostly been killed. However, the gates still did not disappear. Now, without monsters, they are being used as pathways by different countries. Nations are using them to wage wars, and the soldiers for these wars are the hunters. Unfortunately for them, South Korea doesn't have enough hunters and couldn't stop the Japanese hunters from invading. That is, until Ji-hyung appeared. If South Korea were to respond to Japan with their own hunters, it would become total war. But a monster attacking hunters shouldn't be a problem. That is why Jian is asking Ji-hyung to be their monster, all in exchange for saving his mother. Back inside the gate, the group of hunters that Ji-hyung just got rid of were the first of his Japanese victims. It was a beautiful summer day in Japan. However, something was brewing inside a particular glass building, the Prime Minister's official residence. Inside, the Prime Minister of Japan has summoned the Minister of Defense to ask him some questions. The old man has his hands clasped before him and calmly asks the young Minister of Defense if there are strong monsters inside the gates. When the Minister of Defense answers in the negative, the Prime Minister then asks him if there are strong hunters in South Korea. The Minister of Defense replies, "No," once again. The Prime Minister suddenly slams his fist on the table and demands to know why their hunters haven't taken over the Korean peninsula if there are no monsters or Korean hunters standing in their way. The veins on his bald head bulge with irritation as he demands an answer from his subordinate. This old, menacing-looking man is Razaki Judo, the leader of Japan as its Prime Minister. The Minister of Defense apologizes to his superior and promises to rectify the issue. When Prime Minister Judo asks how he plans to do that, the Minister of Defense smiles and declares that he himself will take care of it. This young man is Japan's #1 hunter and Minister of Defense, Ikosai Kajuru. With his simple cape, gold bracers, and one singular earring, Kajuru doesn't look like the dangerous hunter that he actually is. A singular lock of white hair in the shape of the moon is prominently displayed above the rest of his dark hair, hinting at his style and technique. After his meeting, Defense Minister Kajuru orders his secretary to prepare his sword. He will go alone inside the gates. His secretary nervously remarks that the hunters they sent inside the gates were all lost, so it would be wise for him to go along with others. However, Kajuru stops walking and asks her if he looks like the person who would need something like that. Sensing his dangerous aura, the secretary quickly apologizes and prepares his sword. A few hours later, Kajuru passes through the gate in Japan's countryside and is now in the lands beyond. He walks through the cave where the other Japanese hunters went missing and wonders what could have happened to his useless subordinates. Numerous weak and small monsters attack him, but he just cuts them to ribbons with his sword. He knows that his subordinate hunters couldn't have died against weak monsters like those. While wondering what could possibly be inside the cave, he finally gets to the end. Inside, the bloody corpses of Japanese hunters are piled up on one another, and sitting on top of them is a humanoid skeletal monster. Fury envelopes Kajuru, and in one quick motion, he draws his sword from its sheath and strikes at the monster. To his utter surprise, his sword is stopped by the monster's own skeletal sword attached to its hand and its armored forearm. Kajuru is insulted that this measly monster dares to block his sword, and he fluidly dodges the monster's attack. He counterattacks by punching the monster's chest, creating some distance between them, and prepares his sword for one of his techniques. In one continuous motion, he utilizes one of his skills, Cage Ryu, First Moon, and slices at the monster. Despite managing to block it, the monster is blown back by the strength of the attack and coughs up blood. Kajuru isn't finished yet and releases his second technique, Second Moon. The pure energy released by his sword directly impacts the skeletal monster, blowing it once again into the cave wall. Kajuru compliments the monster's sturdiness for still being in one piece. He uses his third technique, Third Moon, to slash at the monster against the wall. This time, the monster manages to dodge his sword and attack with its own. The skeletal sword is about to hit Kajuru on the neck and decapitate him when he nonchalantly reverses the direction of his katana and chops off the monster's arm. The skeletal monster's exoskeleton might be sturdy, but he tells it that his katana can slice even through diamonds. With that, he decapitates the skeletal monster, who falls to the ground. Kajuru sheathes his sword while wondering how the elite hunters of his country lost to something like this. He is about to walk away, leaving Jihyung's body and decapitated head on the cave floor. Jihyung's eyes are blank, as if he is genuinely dead, but inside, his mind is remembering his childhood, especially his dad. His dad was always busy because of work, but he was a very warm and friendly man. Jihyung had always liked that about him. One day, he and his mom happily welcomed his dad home from work with a box of fried chicken. He ran across the street to hug his father, not noticing the incoming truck. His dad dropped the chicken and came running toward him too. The last thing he saw of his father alive was him pushing him back into the truck's headlights, bathing his father in light. His dad passed away because of him. With his death, his business went under, and Jihyung and his mom ended up with a huge debt. His mom's soft hands became rough from scrubbing dishes and working in their dwindling restaurant. When he asked his mom if she was okay, she always just kindly smiled at him and assured him that she was fine. But every night, Jihyung knew the truth. He couldn't sleep, and tears fell from his eyes because he could hear his mom silently crying beside him. His mom was crying, and it was all because of him. Days later, he realized that someone like him shouldn't live anymore, and his shaking hands held a box cutter. A few minutes later, his mom was bringing him dinner when she abruptly dropped the tray upon seeing what her son was doing. Jihyung was crying but smiling as he held his injured hand before him. He happily tells his mom that he might be awakened. His wrist slowly heals, and the TV blares about an interview with Korea's #1 hunter, a crystal named Jim Gang. Jihyung hugs his mom and declares that just like the guy on the TV, he'll become a hunter and make them rich and happy. But that's not what happened. Years later, his mom is comatose in the hospital. This memory brings life back to Jihyung's eyes. He also recalls his conversation with Jian, where she told him that the world's balance is already broken. Many nations have already been conquered by hunters. Currently, their biggest enemy is Japan. That's why they wanted him to become their country's monster and hunt Japan's strongest hunters. While he had just fought with one of Japan's strongest hunters, Kajuru was trying to think of what his next move would be. Kajuru mindlessly realizes that he used up too much time with the skeletal monster, and it looks like he'll have to go to South Korea himself to capture the country. Meanwhile, he doesn't notice that Jihyung's decapitated head is slowly moving behind him and crawling toward him. He only finds out when Jihyung suddenly bites through his leg, surprising him. Looking at the head attacking him, Kajuru can see a new skeleton growing out of it, and he realizes that his enemy must have regeneration. This doesn't make sense, though, since he already cut off the head. Meanwhile, Jihyung continues to chomp down on Kajuru's leg, eliciting a painful scream from him. Kajuru slices Jihyung's face, escaping his bite, and finally takes Jihyung seriously. A moon forms on Kajuru's forehead, his eyes light up like lightning, and moonlight reflects through his sword. The symbol of his technique illuminates the very ground they are standing on, and in an instant, Kajuru vanishes. Jihyung can only sense flickers of Kajuru running around him. Kajuru then activates his most powerful attack, Kajuru, Fatal 12th Moon. The numerous silhouettes of Kajuru simultaneously attack. Jihyung can't even react as his whole body gets minced by Kajuru's katana. The pressure waves created by his technique are so powerful that the slashes travel and reverberate throughout the tunnel and into the gate. The slashes escape the gate, back to Earth, and the whole forest mountainside is devastated by the attack. On the other side of the gate, inside the cave, the roof is carved with moonlight patterns and the floor is diced. Meanwhile, Kajuru shakily walks away from his devastating attack, still enduring the injury on his ankle. He realizes that he might need healing when, all of a sudden, a spike of bone hits his other leg. He nervously laughs while behind him, The skeletal hand from which the bone spike erupted is shakily pointing toward him. Attached to the skeletal hand is a battered, yet menacing-looking skeleton still trying to crawl toward him. Kajuru shakes from the attack and the realization that Ji-hyung is still regenerating. He cannot believe that Ji-hyung is still trying to fight despite the large difference in strength between them. He grips his katana once more and charges back at Ji-hyung with a shout. A few days later, the gate in the countryside of Japan is surrounded by numerous hunters. The Ministry of Defense's elite hunters are all there, and with his arms crossed is Japan's Prime Minister himself, Judo. Beside him, Kajuru's secretary asks the Prime Minister if they really need that much firepower. Prime Minister Judo replies that it's been 3 days since Kajuru went in. Since he still hasn't returned, they need to check on him. After all, Kajuru is still Japan's #1 hunter. All of a sudden, his speech is interrupted when a head rolls out of the gate. It is Kajuru's head. Then, a skeletal monster walks out of the gate and into Japan itself. Judo is shocked by this sudden turn of events, but his head abruptly flies off, detached from his body. Meanwhile, back in South Korea, a conversation is being held at the Korean Hunter Association headquarters. A subordinate is telling Jian that since Ji-hyung murdered Jim Gang's son, it would be bad if he found out. Is that a good enough reason to send Ji-hyung to Japan? Jian smiles and replies to her subordinate, asking whether he isn't even remotely curious who would win, the ever-regenerating Ji-hyung or Japan's strongest hunter. In Japan, Prime Minister Judo's head abruptly reattaches itself to his body, and his flaming fist suddenly punches Ji-hyung to the ground. The punch causes an explosion so large that it seems a comet has fallen right at the two combatants. Ji-hyung is now unconscious on the ground, with Judo standing over him, lava dripping from his fists and burning holes throughout his clothes. After all, Judo is not just the Prime Minister of Japan. He is also an SSS rank hunter, Japan's #0. His bald head is flaming with anger, while the cut on his neck has already miraculously healed, thanks to the magma-like nature of his body. Meanwhile, Ji-hyung lies before him, defeated and stunned by Minister Judo's singular but powerful attack. In the story, we see that 3 years ago, all the monsters were eliminated from the small gates around the world, and humanity began to fear the hunters because they were incredibly powerful. As a result, some countries attempted to eliminate the hunters. They fired missiles at them and tried every possible way to get rid of them, but they failed miserably. On the other hand, when the other hunters saw all this, they made a deal with the government that they would either coexist or take control of the country through their power. In both scenarios, the hunters achieved supremacy. The first country that the hunters conquered was Japan. The reason for this was that Japan's Prime Minister, Judo, was an SSS rank hunter. Even before gaining his powers, he was extremely aggressive, and when the hunter system was introduced, he tried to take control of South Korea, but his plan failed due to a single monster. At that moment, we see Ji-hyung using his regeneration power to heal himself and standing up. Then, Japan's hunters, along with Prime Minister Judo, come forward, and his disciples observe that he is using regeneration power. Among them is a 7th-rank hunter named Jodimaru and an 8th-rank hunter named Daku. Both say to Prime Minister Judo, "Leave this to us. We can handle it." Jodimaru states, "This is just a pathetic monster that can only regenerate." Daku adds, "What if I cut off your head?" But just then, Ji-hyung charges forward and grabs Jodimaru by the face, simultaneously decapitating Daku with a swift strike. Seeing this, Jodimaru is momentarily shocked as Ji-hyung crushes his head with his own hands, turning it into mush. Everyone is stunned to see how powerful Ji-hyung is. He stands over the crushed head of Jodimaru, blood splattered everywhere, and the other hunters, filled with rage, are infuriated that he has done this to one of their own. At that moment, Prime Minister Judo declares, "Now, if anyone takes a step forward, I will take their life." Everyone is shocked, wondering why Prime Minister Judo is saying this. He glares at Ji-hyung, remembering his disciple, and flashes back to a winter's day. Snow is falling as Prime Minister Judo approaches a child who is shivering in the cold. Judo sits down beside the child and asks, "What are you doing here, kids?" The child, trembling from the cold, asks, "Who are you?" Prime Minister Judo replies, "I am a hunter. It's very cold. Come with me." He then asks the child for his name. The child answers, "My name is Ikosai Kujuru." The scene shifts back to the present, where Ikosai Kujuru's head lies on the ground. Seeing this, Prime Minister Judo becomes furious, and flames seem to emanate from his face. Meanwhile, Jihyung has a slight smile on his face. Prime Minister Judo launches a powerful attack against Jihyung, who manages to block it with ease. However, the attack is so powerful that Jihyung is forced to fall back. Prime Minister Judo charges forward and begins to strike Jihyung repeatedly. With each hit, Jihyung's body becomes more battered. Prime Minister Judo's relentless assault causes Jihyung's eyes to pop out and roll away. Then, Prime Minister Judo performs a devastating lava attack that turns everything to ash, leaving the remaining hunters in awe of his strength. They say to each other that they expected nothing less from Prime Minister Judo, hoping he would turn this monster to dust. Standing over the remains, only the bones of Jihyung are left, while everything else has been burned away. As Prime Minister Judo reaches down to pick up Ikosai Kujuru's head from the ground, he suddenly senses something. Jihyung is using his regeneration power, healing himself. Prime Minister Judo looks on in shock. Suddenly, we are shown a flashback where many corpses lie around, and Prime Minister Judo says, "Now, no one will stand with us." Standing among the bodies, he tells someone, "I'm sorry you had to go through all this." Ikosai Kujuru replies, "It's all right. We barely managed to conquer only Japan, and now we need to take control of South Korea and China." Prime Minister Judo tells Ikosai Kujuru that this time, he might even die. If he wants to go, he can. Ikosai Kujuru responds, "You are the one who saved me when I was freezing to death on the streets. I can't repay you this debt in my lifetime, so I won't leave your side. But I want one thing. Once everything is over, can I call you my father?" Ikosai Kujuru, who has a deep sense of gratitude, replies, "Without asking, I already consider you my son." Hearing this, Ikosai Kujuru is deeply moved and astonished. Once again, we shift back to the current story, where Prime Minister Judo is creating extreme heat due to the lava, and the lava is moving toward the other hunters. One hunter, named Haname, uses her ice power to freeze the lava and creates an ice wall around her teammates. Seeing the flames coming from Prime Minister Judo's body, Jihyung steps forward, placing his foot on the lava. Just then, Prime Minister Judo unleashes his most dangerous attack, one that will vaporize every cell in the body. This attack is called magma synthesis, and he directs it toward Jihyung, launching a series of flames that begin to burn him. Only Jihyung's bones remain. Everything else has been reduced to ash. Prime Minister Judo then targets Jihyung's bones with another attack, intending to turn even those to ashes. All the hunters are astonished to see the strength of Prime Minister Judo's attack, which has created a crater in the ground, filled with lava. As the lava surrounds him, Jihyung finds himself engulfed in flames. At that moment, Prime Minister Judo calls for one of his students, Haname. She immediately responds, saying, "Yes, sir." Judo instructs her, "Now it's your turn. Use your powers to freeze the lava." Haname activates her abilities, and she begins to freeze the entire area around them, encasing the lava in a thick layer of ice. Prime Minister Judo turns his gaze away, saying, "Let him be trapped in this lava." Jihyung is burning badly in the lava, and they intend to confine him there forever, to let him burn endlessly. Then, the scene shifts to South Korea, where a building named Kyum Kong Guild is shown. Inside, a girl uses her powers to treat a man, and just then, the man's eyes open wide. His name is Taso. The scene shifts back to the present battle. Prime Minister Judo tells the other hunters, "Only the minimum number of people will stay here, and the rest should leave." They respond with a respectful, "Yes, sir." Suddenly, Kong Jihyung regenerates again, emerging from the lava. He mutters to himself, "Lava like this inside a blood gate is something I've experienced tens of thousands of times." His flesh and skin continuously melt in the lava, but his regenerative powers instantly heal him, though the pain is unbearable. The pain was never easy to bear, He thinks to himself. Despite being burned to ashes, Ji-hyun still rises from the lava, his body in constant agony. Hanem notices this and is frozen in fear, stunned by the sight of Ji-hyun regenerating again. Ji-hyun starts advancing towards them, still crying out in pain. Prime Minister Judo, sensing the danger, tells Hanem, "Take the hunters with you and hide somewhere safe." Then, with a swift motion, Judo jumps into the lava crater to confront Ji-hyun head-on. Hanem watches Judo confront the monster, feeling emotional as memories of the past flood her mind. She remembers a time when she warned him, "You need to stop. You're overdoing it. Your magma regeneration ability is not omnipotent. You'll die if you don't stop." Judo had replied with a serious expression. The four great hunter nations are the USA, China, Russia, and Japan. Out of them, Japan is the weakest. If we can't absorb South Korea, there's no way Japan can survive. Hanem had moved closer to Judo and hugged him from behind, pleading, "But how many of our hunters will have to die for this?" Judo's response was resolute. "I can only fight by myself. Even if my body gets destroyed, I will protect my country." Back in the present, Judo launches a powerful attack at Ji-hyun, causing a massive explosion. The blast sends shockwaves across the battlefield. Judo continues to land punches on Ji-hyun, breaking his ribs with each strike. With a powerful blow, Judo throws Ji-hyun back. Ji-hyun struggles to steady himself, but Judo unleashes a powerful magma attack, sending a massive wave of flame and lava toward him, burning him to ashes once more. Ji-hyun screams in agony. Judo leaps into the air and descends on Ji-hyun with a crushing blow, seemingly annihilating him. Meanwhile, Hanem tells the other hunters, "Prime Minister Judo has ordered us to evacuate to a safe place. I will stay, but you all must leave." The other hunters hesitate but eventually say, "Prime Minister Judo has helped us in our times of need. We've decided. We will protect him until the very end." They bow before Hanem, calling her the Prime Minister's wife. As Judo continues his full-power assault, flames surge from the volcano. Judo grabs the remains of Ji-hyun, smashing them until they vaporize into the air. Hanem and the other hunters watch from the edge of the volcano, but suddenly, Judo is shocked. From the vapor, Ji-hyun begins to regenerate once again, launching himself towards the hunters. To Judo's horror, Ji-hyun heads straight for Hanem. Just as he is about to reach her, she removes her gloves, preparing to use her ice abilities. But to her shock, Ji-hyun grabs her hand and pulls her towards him. The other hunters, stunned, watch as half of Ji-hyun's body becomes encased in ice. Judo, enraged, yells at Ji-hyun and commands the other hunters to attack him. They prepare their assault, but they are surprised by the intensity of Judo's anger. Moving swiftly, Judo cuts off Ji-hyun's arm to save Hanem. However, in a devastating counterattack, Ji-hyun decapitates Judo, severing his head from his body. Hanem is stunned, watching in horror as Judo's headless body falls on top of her. The other hunters, shocked by what they just witnessed, unleash a barrage of attacks on Ji-hyun. Hanem uses her freezing powers to encase Ji-hyun's entire body in ice. Together, their combined attacks shatter Ji-hyun's body into pieces, breaking him apart like ice crystals. The hunters stand tall, believing they have finally won the battle. One of them asks Hanem, "Prime Minister's wife, are you all right?" But Hanem is still in shock, staring at Judo's lifeless body, unable to believe that he is dead. She begins to cry, desperately trying to reattach Judo's severed head to his body, but it is no use. Through her tears, she tells the hunters, "Judo, he's no longer with us." Suddenly, to everyone's horror, Ji-hyun regenerates once again. Without giving them a moment to react, he charges toward the hunters, ready to attack. Tears were dripping down from Haneme's eyes as she saw the terrifying monster standing in front of her. She began to lose consciousness, her vision fading. When she slowly opened her tired eyes, she saw Judo lying down on a bed in front of her. He asked, "Hanem, are you awake?" Without hesitation, she tightly hugged him, calling his name, "Judo." But Judo looked at her in shock, confused, and asked, "Hanem, what happened?" She told him, trembling, I had a horrible nightmare. Haname looked at him with love in her eyes, and Judo gently reassured her. Everything is okay. You don't need to worry. I'm with you. Haname, filled with relief, leaned in and started to kiss him. But as she opened her eyes during the kiss, she was horrified. The face she was kissing was not Judo's, it was his frozen head. Her tongue was stuck to the frozen head of Judo, and she was paralyzed with terror. In front of her stood Jihyung, now a complete monster, having slaughtered all the hunters. Their dismembered bodies lay scattered around the battlefield. Seeing the horrific scene, Haname, in shock, used her ice abilities and touched her own face, freezing herself completely into ice. Jihyung, with monstrous eyes, stood amidst the carnage. The bodies of the hunters lay lifeless on the ground, and he could only wonder to himself, what have I become? Conflicted and tormented by his transformation, he began to walk toward the green portal gate. Meanwhile, in South Korea at the Kyum Kong Guild, the scene shifts. Inside the building, in the mana stone storage room, a female hunter turns to Tasu and says, You can't push yourself too hard. You're the only one with any mana left. We barely saved you. With a trembling voice, she tried to tell him about their friends, but Tasu interrupted, I know they're running out of mana. They both stood in silence, staring at the mana stone. Tasu thought to himself, why did that brat I used to play with when we were younger? How did he escape from the blood gate and kill me? Gritting his teeth in frustration, he muttered, that worm bastard. Tasu, the Kyum Kong Guild master and an S-rank hunter, clenched his fists. The girl beside him asked, Are you okay? Tasu replied calmly, Yes, everything is fine. Then he turned to her and said, Release the seal. The girl is exhausted, and sweat is dripping from her body due to fatigue. She says to Taesu, I've broken the seal. Taesu responds, Then summon all the members of our guild here. We are then shown that all the guild members have gathered. One of them bows his head and says, We are at your service, master. Another member says, I thought the master had died. To this, another member replies, The vice guild master brought him back to life. At that moment, Han Kyung-chan, the guild's head of intelligence and an S-rank hunter, speaks up. The monster has gone into the gate after massacring people in Japan. Han Kyung-chan further adds, You called us here, which means you want us to kill this monster. We swear we'll help you, even if it costs us our lives. Suddenly, Taesu steps forward and decapitates Han Kyung-chan. The rest of the members are shocked by what they see. Taesu begins absorbing him. The other members stand by in disbelief as Taesu says, This was the former vice president of the Korean Hunter Association. Since I joined the association 3 years ago, our guild has begun dominating Korea. As Taesu absorbs Han Kyung-chan's power, telekinesis, and S-rank ability, he starts bending and breaking another member with just a flick of his fingers, sending blood splattering onto the others. The girl then asks Taesu, Was breaking the seal really necessary for you? Your ability is cursed? Taesu responds, No, this is the best ability. Taesu then asks the remaining members, Will you help me? And begins killing them one by one. The remaining members attempt to flee. There were a total of 1,528 members. Taesu kills them all and starts absorbing their powers. Tears flow from his eyes, overwhelmed by the joy of gaining so much power. The girl, unable to bear the massacre, covers her eyes with her hands. She asks Taesu, Are you all right? Taesu responds coldly, No. That monster killed an SSS-rank prime minister. Sitting atop a mountain of corpses, Taesu says, This power is still not enough. I need to gather more power. It's not enough to kill that monster. Angrily, Taesu declares, I will kill that worm at any cost. His face is covered in blood splatter, and he yells, I'm coming for you, Russia. Prepare to die, monster. Then we're shown a shipping port where a green portal appears, and a girl is standing in front of it. Jihyung steps out of the portal, and the girl welcomes him. The scene shifts to a large building where the girl is treating Jihyung's mother. She says, My S-rank ability will heal every damaged cell one by one, using my mana. Jihyung looks at his mother and tells himself, No matter how long it takes, I'll save my mother at any cost. The girl, trembling and weak, steps out and tells him, if I continue the treatment like this every day, your mother will regain consciousness by next week. She's so weak that she collapses to the ground. Ji-hyun asks her, it seems like you're using too much mana. Why are you pushing yourself so hard? She grabs his hand and says, you must survive at all costs. But suddenly, green light begins emitting from Ji-hyun's hand, and he pulls it away. The girl tells him, just as I thought, your monster transformation is accelerating because of the blood gate. She further explains, 15 years ago, when the first gate opened, all the other gates gradually started turning into blood gates. But since you survived the blood gate, the rate at which green gates are turning into blood gates has accelerated. That's why most gates in the world have now become blood gates. She continues, the mana flowing from these gates is what gives you your power. If we understand the flow of mana, we see that a normal gate is like a hole, while a blood gate is like a passage. These gates are connected to something, and something is coming through them, something that is searching for you. More and more monsters are emerging from the blood gates, and they are ridden by skeletal creatures resembling humans. These gates have appeared all over the world, and people are looking at them, wondering what these things are. The scene then shifts to the president's office in Korea, surrounded by a barrier. The president slams his hand on the table and shouts, what is happening here? Has there been any response from the Kongjam guilds? The secretary, trembling, says, all the guild members are dead. The president asks, why?
How?
What happened? The secretary replies, I don't know. We haven't received any information. The secretary then asks, what should we do now? Should we seek help from others? The president responds, no, that would be suicide. He instructs the secretary, first, declare martial law. The secretary replies, the military won't be able to do anything. These monsters are too dangerous. The president says, we have to do something. Grabbing his head in frustration, he says, the Kongjam guild wasn't everything. We still have other options. We have other guilds, like the second-ranked guild in Korea, Dosa Guild. There's an A-rank hunter there named John Woo-jin, and another A-rank hunter named Kong Se-hee. Then there's the third-ranked Vingal Guild, with 2 A-rank hunters, including Superwoman. And the fourth-ranked guild, Yonghak Guild, has 2 A-rank hunters, Yonghak and Nam Junyoung. He continues, but they've all been killed. A monster from the blood gate, connected to the gate itself, was huge. It killed everyone. Ji-hyun thinks to himself, what is all this nonsense? Is this all because of me? The girl asks Ji-hyun, what will you do now? In the next scene, a girl is lying on the street and a monster is about to kill her. Ji-hyun quickly rushes forward and slices the monster in half with his skeletal sword, which is attached to his body. Ji-hyun thinks, when I died inside the blood gate, its mana tried to turn me into a monster. I barely resisted. As a result, I thought I had gained normal regenerative abilities. But that's not what happened. It's the mana from the blood gate that won't let me die until I fully become a monster. Ji-hyun clenches his teeth and says, all I wanted was a peaceful life after saving my mother. He punches another monster, shouting, why won't you all leave me alone, and tears the monster apart. Meanwhile, someone is watching Ji-hyun through a blood gate from the other side. He says, is this him? He sits on a throne made of skeletons and thinks, is he the one who caused the crack? Ji-hyun says he will eliminate all the monsters and asks Sim Jien to keep healing his mother in a safe place. Sim Jien understands his plan and agrees, saying she will continue healing her from the association's underground bunker. Meanwhile, she mentally urges him to fight hard for the sake of his mother. Ji-hyun reflects that these monsters seem familiar, realizing they are the same ones he fought continuously for 5 years inside the blood gate. He remembers that, after a certain point, the monsters stopped coming. He thinks that if he can eliminate all of them, he might finally live peacefully with his mother. Suddenly, a bullet strikes his head. When he turns around, he notices it's the army. One of the soldiers remarks that he only eliminated monsters, but another replies that it doesn't matter and says, he is the cause of the situation, and we will contain him until hunter support arrives. This surprises Ji-hyun a bit, but He has no time to think as several tanks fire upon him. The attacks impact him hard, and he screams in pain, mentally affected. In that moment of agony, his vision starts to fade, and when he regains it, he is standing in front of a red gate, which has started reacting to his presence. He recalls Sim Jian's warning that being near a blood gate could make it difficult to suppress his transformation into a monster. In that moment, he sees something and remembers suffering from attacks by his tormentors while a blonde boy looked on. The memory shifts, and he recalls a time when that same boy complained, saying Taesu was a bastard and asking why he was always the target. Ji-hyun replied that he was an easy target and added that if things continued this way, the boy would get hurt too, asking him to avoid acknowledging him at school. The blonde boy, annoyed, grabs Ji-hyun by the shirt, questioning if he's crazy. Ji-hyun averts his gaze, saying, "Forget it. Just leave." The blonde boy, frustrated, walks away. Reflecting on this, Ji-hyun recalls that he once thought of the blonde as his childhood friend. At least he had. However, the boy had secretly been gathering evidence of the bullying since he could record everything he saw with his right eye. The blonde sent this evidence to the police, the education office, and news agencies. The day after, Ji-hyun was discovered, and his right eye was taken as punishment. Enraged, Ji-hyun confronted the boy, but the boy said he didn't think they could continue being friends. Ji-hyun realized that Taesu was behind the betrayal. The blonde, trembling, begged Ji-hyun to never try anything against Taesu. Ji-hyun, devastated, asked what he would do now that he'd lost his ability. The boy assured him that he still had plenty to live for and enthusiastically told Ji-hyun he would be joining the army. The memory fades, and in the present, the blonde's severed head is shown impaled on a bone spear held by Ji-hyun. Ji-hyun screams in grief over what he has done, but there's no time to process his emotions as more monsters attack, prompting him to react and eliminate them. Meanwhile, in the president's office, the president demands, "What is that thing?" His secretary explains that it's the monster who eliminated the Kyum Kong Guild and the Japanese prime minister, and that he was the one responsible for the portal collapse. According to their investigation, they need to eliminate him to restore the gates to normal. The president asks why they are fighting each other, and his secretary replies that he doesn't know but emphasizes that, regardless, even other monsters haven't been able to kill him. He adds that the Bloodgate's influence is spreading, and they cannot delay any longer. The president inquires about domestic hunters, but his assistant responds that they've all been annihilated, causing the president to worry. In the end, he orders them to seek help from foreign hunters. Elsewhere, someone asks if the monster that killed so many in Korea and Japan was the one responsible for causing the Bloodgate. He slams his spear into the ground, saying, "This will be interesting." This is Luan Zhuguang, China's top-ranked hunter. In another part of the world, a woman complains about what she sees. She is Vladimir Rozana, Russia's #1 ranked hunter. Lastly, a man with tears in his eyes says he can hear the screams of those who suffer and states that he must go. His assistant comments that if he does, the war will be over. The man, using his powers and destroying everything around him, declares, "It's over." This is Stephen Lucas, America's #1 hunter, and all three are now headed for Korea. For 5 years, Ji-hyun fought endlessly against creatures in the blood dimension, a brutal, otherworldly environment where food and sleep were impossible luxuries, and survival depended solely on combat. The unyielding battles took a toll on his sanity. Each time he lost control, his transformation into a monster advanced. But every time he felt himself slipping away, he'd remember his mother, lying helpless in a vegetative state, and the man responsible for her suffering. That searing rage helped him suppress the monstrous shift within him, even if only temporarily. Yet now, he questions why he is on the verge of losing control. Has his resolve weakened since he achieved his revenge? Or has the blood dimension's magic itself grown more powerful, amplifying the monstrous force within him? He realizes he may not be able to keep his transformation at bay as he once did. In that moment, he resolves that if he can't be free of the blood dimension's influence, he will at least use his powers to eliminate every last creature within the portals. Perhaps then he can atone for the sins he's committed, some innocent lives taken, others transformed irreversibly by his presence. At that moment, a sharp impact shatters his head. His vision fades as he struggles to regenerate, his mind frantically pulling him back to reality. His enemy stands before him, preparing to attack again as Ji-hyun forces himself upright, readying for the next brutal assault. Meanwhile, on Earth it was Christmas, the day the portals appeared. Inside a large church, a priest spoke to his congregation, reminding them of gratitude as the holiday season brought hope and renewal. But the moment of peace shattered when a massive portal materialized above the city. Without hunters, the people were defenseless, left to flee in terror. The priest urged everyone to evacuate, and his assistant begged him to leave with them. But the priest replied firmly, "You go first. I'll follow soon." At that instant, a monster emerged from the portal and locked eyes on the priest. Just as the beast lunged toward him, a blinding light enveloped the church, eliminating the monster in an instant. The stunned priest whispered, "Is this God's will?" This miracle marked the awakening of Stephen Lucas, the world's first SSS rank hero, who would go on to save the entire United States. Ji-hyun had idolized Lucas as a young boy, seeing him as the ultimate hero, a man who defended humanity against all odds. Now, Stephen Lucas, America's #1 hero, had arrived in Korea. But Ji-hyun didn't have long to wonder why he was here. In an instant, Lucas struck Ji-hyun without hesitation, testing his strength against the monstrous figure before him. "So, you don't die easily," Lucas remarked, observing Ji-hyun's regeneration. As Ji-hyun began to heal, Lucas cast a restrictive ability, immobilizing Ji-hyun. Panicking, Ji-hyun felt himself forced toward a red portal, but with a powerful effort, he threw himself out of reach, landing heavily on the ground. Lucas prepared another blow. Desperately, Ji-hyun shouted, "I'm not a creature." Lucas stopped, startled, and asked, "You're humans?" With difficulty, Ji-hyun asked Lucas to hear his story. As Ji-hyun recounted the harrowing journey that had led him here, Lucas's expression softened, and he wrapped Ji-hyun in an understanding embrace. "It's been hard, hasn't it?" he said quietly. "What's your name?" "Kong Ji-hyun," he replied. Lucas nodded, explaining that his mission had always been to protect humanity, but that he had taken many lives and bore the weight of those deaths. To atone for this, he tattooed their names onto his body. "I can help you fight these creatures," he offered, but then added gravely, "But know this, these red portals are opening everywhere. Many lives will be lost." Lucas apologized, carving Ji-hyun's name onto his body as well, before whispering, "I'm sorry," and preparing to eliminate Ji-hyun once more. Elsewhere, Sim Jien watched this scene unfold from the Hunter Association as she continued to tend to Ji-hyun's mother, drawing strength from the knowledge that Ji-hyun was still fighting. Meanwhile, in Russia, Vladimir Rozana, the top hunter, scoffed at Lucas's bold choice to go to Korea alone. She thought him reckless, especially given his prowess in the recent war. Her irritation grew when she learned that her army had lost 80% of its strength and could no longer hold the defensive line. "It would be different if I could just capture the Arctic creature," she muttered angrily. Just then, a man entered, his presence commanding attention. "I'll capture it myself," he announced with certainty. It was none other than Tae-soo, ready to claim his own place in the escalating battle against the Bloodgate's horrors. The Arctic monster, the first of its kind, had been an unparalleled threat, an SSS-class beast capable of unprecedented destruction. It emerged from a portal in the bleak Russian Arctic, and with a single devastating strike, obliterated the entire Russian Arctic base. Unprepared for the reality of magical creatures or the existence of portals, the Russian government scrambled, deploying every conceivable resource to confront the beast. Soldiers, artillery, and airstrikes bombarded the creature, but these conventional weapons merely glanced off it, leaving the monster unscathed. In a final, desperate measure, half of Russia's nuclear arsenal was unleashed, turning the northern territories into a radioactive wasteland. But even the destructive force of nuclear weapons was powerless against a creature infused with mana. Instead, the radioactive fallout transformed northern Russia into a desolate land infested with new monsters, further isolating it. In the wake of this catastrophe, Russia was left weakened, its resources stretched thin, leading to its eventual declaration of war on the United States to claim additional assets. Back in the present, Taesu stands confidently, declaring, "I'll eliminate that Arctic monster myself." Across from him, Vladimir Rozana, Russia's #1 hunter, scoffs, raising an eyebrow at the young hunter's boldness. "A Korean S-rank hunter? And you think you can face it?" Her voice drips with sarcasm as she laughs at his audacity. "Showing up here without permission. How foolish," she says, crossing her arms. "Do you think an S-rank has what it takes to face the Arctic monster? Or do you have a death wish?" With a smirk, she unleashes her power, her aura radiating fiercely, causing the entire ground around Taesu to tremble and shatter under the sheer force. Yet Taesu remains undeterred. He mocks, "Oh, so you're here for that monster? Funny. Last I heard, you couldn't even stand up to the United States," he taunts, his words sharp and aimed to provoke. Vladimir's smile vanishes as her eyes narrow with cold fury. She questions him, "How do you plan to survive the radiation and reach the Arctic monsters?" Taesu, unbothered, raises a shield, a shimmering field of mana. But she merely laughs, unimpressed. "That shield won't hold up to the kind of radiation we're talking about." Taesu's smirk deepens as he activates layers of additional defensive abilities, coating his body with a series of powerful shields and barriers. Vladimir's gaze sharpens as she watches him. "All right," she finally concedes, "if you somehow manage to kill the Arctic monster, I'll grant you 30% of the mana stone." "Not a penny more," she declares with a cold finality. But Taesu just laughs and walks past her, advancing steadily toward the Arctic wasteland, the glow of his shields illuminating his path. Elsewhere, Stephen Lucas stands face-to-face with Jihyung, who begins to radiate light from within. Lucas's expression softens for a moment. "I'm sorry," he murmurs, "but I have to end this." He attacks Jihyung with a lethal blow, and, in an instant, Jihyung's body disintegrates into dust, carried off by the breeze. Yet within seconds, the dust reforms, taking shape as an eye, then a bone, and finally, his entire body. Jihyung regenerates, looking up to meet Lucas's unyielding gaze. Jihyung, realizing the gap between their powers, feels a flicker of fear. But determination ignites within him as he lunges forward, thrusting a bone spear toward Lucas's face. The sharp edge embeds between Lucas's brows, but Lucas barely reacts, his calm eyes holding Jihyung's as he tightens his embrace. "If hurting me helps ease your heart, do it as much as you need," Lucas murmurs, pulling Jihyung closer. Once again, Jihyung's body turns to dust. And yet, Jihyung regenerates, gritting his teeth in rage. Lucas, observing him carefully, wonders aloud, "Is your regeneration truly limitless?" Then he embraces Jihyung yet again, whispering, "I'll keep eliminating you, painlessly." Jihyung struggles, his body reforming through excruciating pain. Memories of his ability flood back, exoskeleton manifestation, an ability that coats his skin in a hardened skeletal armor, but at an excruciating cost. Each regeneration is agony, every cell in his body searing with pain. He remembers his body breaking and healing again and again for the sake of revenge and hope. But Lucas's ruthless attacks, coming immediately after every regeneration, push him beyond any threshold of pain he has endured. The endless cycle of destruction and regeneration gnaws at his sanity, breaking him down. He recalls a memory from high school when a classmate once asked him what his power was. When Jihyung had told him, "Exoskeleton," the boy had recoiled in disgust, muttering curses as he threw Jihyung to the ground. Now, enduring this unbearable pain, Jihyung wonders, why? Why do I have to suffer like this? What did I do wrong? As he writhes in Lucas's arms, despair floods him, and he admits that Lucas may be right. Perhaps, by continuing to live, he condemns others to death. But then he remembers his mother. "Even if I die, she will live," he tells himself. In a final burst of resolve, he begins to absorb energy from the red portals around them. The energy pulses through him, radiating outward as his body begins to glow with intensity. Seeing the change, Lucas prepares to counter. But before he can strike, Ji-hyun clenches his fist, channeling all the accumulated energy from the portal into one powerful blow. Lucas braces himself as the punch connects, the force sending shockwaves that ripple outward, visible even on live broadcasts throughout the city. Crowds gather, watching in stunned silence as the fight plays out on massive screens, Lucas's own son among them, his face pale as he watches his father struggle against the monstrous figure on screen. Inside the Korean Hunter Association building, Sim Jien, overexerted from continuously healing Ji-hyun's mother, collapses to the ground, her strength nearly spent. Her secretary rushes to her side, supporting her as she coughs, but Sim Jien looks up and gasps, the healing, it's finally complete. In a hospital room nearby, Ji-hyun's mother stirs as her eyes flutter open, the haze of her long sleep finally lifting.
In Russia, a man sits in a dimly lit command room, monitoring the situation. The information reaches him. Ji-young is battling none other than Stephen Lucas, the SSS-ranged hero of the United States. A smirk forms on Tae-soo's lip. That bastard really has some guts, he mutters to himself, though a flicker of understanding crosses his mind. Despite their stark differences, Tae-soo reflects that their situations are eerily similar. Both have endured unspeakable suffering. Both have tapped into powers that come at unbearable costs, and both are now considered monstrous threats by the world. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Jae-young's clash with Lucas continues to escalate. Having absorbed mana directly from the Red Gates, Jae-young emanates an aura of raw, ominous energy that even Lucas finds unsettling. Lucas, however, stands calm and resolute. "That mana you carry," Lucas observes, "it reeks of destruction. But even so, I'll shoulder your pain. I'll forgive you for your sins." But Jae-young has had enough. His crimson eyes burn with frustration as he snarls, "I don't need your forgiveness." With a roar, he draws his bone blade and slashes at Lucas, aiming to silence his self-righteous preaching. The blade cuts cleanly through Lucas, but instead of blood, Lucas's figure vanishes into thin air, reforming a short distance away behind Jae-young, completely unharmed. Lucas smiles faintly. Most of the time he begins, his voice calm yet firm. "Having someone to listen to your troubles helps. I'll be that person for you, Ji-hyun. Share your pain. I'll bear it with you." In a swift motion, Lucas drives his hand straight through Jae-young's skull, cracking it apart. For a moment, the battlefield falls silent, save for the sound of crackling energy. But Jae-young seizes the moment. Using his regenerative abilities, he traps Lucas's arm inside his head, and retaliates, severing Lucas's arm at the elbow with a powerful slash of his blade. Lucas staggers back, momentarily stunned by the unexpected counter. Ji-young, though gravely injured, doesn't pause. The pain coursing through his body no longer bothers him. His mind is consumed by one thing: revenge. Blood streams from his broken head, and the severed hand lodged inside him begins to tear him apart further. Yet he pushes forward, his determination unbroken. Lucas watches him with an unreadable expression. "This boy," he murmurs, his voice tinged with both respect and pity. "He carries so much pain. When I gained this ability, I thought I understood suffering. I hear it constantly, the cries of people in agony, the hopelessness of famine, sickness, and calamities. Their voices never leave me." He pauses, his expression softening. "But I also hear hope, gratitude, the joy of those who were saved. These voices, they remind me why I keep going." With a single deafening clap, Lucas summons a wave of divine energy, obliterating Ji-young's body into a mist of blood and ash. The ground shakes under the force of the attack, leaving a massive crater in its wake. Lucas straightens, breathing heavily. "It's over," he whispers. But it isn't. From the crimson mist, Ji-young begins to reform, his regeneration faster and more powerful than ever. his exoskeleton emerges sharper and more jagged, his red aura flaring brighter. Lucas's eyes narrow as he realizes the extent of Ji Young's power. Even if 1,000 hands drag him down, Lucas mutters, he'll keep rising. Ji Young lunges again, forcing Lucas to unleash another blast of divine energy. Once more, Ji Young is reduced to a pile of blood and bones, and once more he regenerates, emerging from the destruction unscathed. Lucas clenches his fists. This boy, he mutters, he doesn't know when to stop. In a desperate bid to contain him, Lucas summons a glowing cross of light. The radiant symbol descends onto Ji Young, binding him in place. The divine energy floods Ji Young's mind, taking control of his body and forcing him to self-mutilate. Piece by piece, he begins tearing himself apart, his movements mechanical and agonizing. Lucas watches intently, chanting under his breath. Through this, you will be free of your sins, he declares, his voice rising with fervor. The light grows brighter, driving Ji Young further into madness. Mangled and broken, Ji Young's body continues to tear itself apart, his screams echoing across the battlefield. But even in his agony, Ji Young begins to understand. This isn't salvation, he realizes, his thoughts cutting through the haze of pain. This is control, manipulation, fear. He recalls the faith Lucas's followers place in him and the respect he commands. It's not righteousness, it's fear, Ji Young concludes bitterly. Lucas isn't a saint. He's a snake, a deceiver who thrives on lies. Lucas's followers, oblivious to the truth, continue to pray, their voices filled with unwavering faith. The light intensifies, but Ji Young's resolve remains unbroken. I'll kill him, Ji Young growls through clenched teeth, no matter what it takes. In Russia, Tae-soo faces his own battle against the Arctic Beast, an SSS-class monster of immense power. The icy creature towers over him, its attacks relentless. Tae-soo struggles to hold his ground, blood dripping from numerous wounds. This bastard, he mutters, dodging a massive claw swipe. If I can't kill something like this, I'll never be able to kill Ji Young. Summoning every ounce of strength, Tae-soo pushes himself further. The thought of Ji Young fuels his resolve. I swore, he grits his teeth, I swore I'd kill that bastard with my own hands, and I will. Nothing remains of Ji Young but his indomitable spirit. The Bloodgates sense his unyielding will and respond, reviving him once more. Slowly, his fragmented body regenerates, and with sheer determination, he uses the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on Lucas, using the sharp bones of his ribs as weapons. However, Lucas, ever vigilant, notices the attack just in time. With a powerful motion, Lucas grabs Ji Young mid-charge and slams him into a nearby building. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the structure entirely and sending debris flying in all directions. Ji Young's body crumples from the blow, and he falls through the fractured floors, landing in the dark, damp sewers below. As his shattered body regenerates once again, he looks ahead and freezes. There, standing amidst the dim light of the sewer, is his mother. For a moment, Ji Young feels a flicker of relief. A tear escapes his glowing red eyes as he gazes at her. But his hope is short-lived. His mother stares at him with wide, horrified eyes. She stumbles back, her trembling voice barely audible as she whispers, "Is that really my son?" Ji Young takes a hesitant step forward, reaching out to her, his skeletal exoskeleton shifting unnervingly. "Mother, it's me," he says, his voice cracking. "Don't be afraid, I'm still your son." But his mother doesn't see her son. She sees a monster, a grotesque amalgamation of bone and blood, unrecognizable and terrifying. Memories flood her mind, reminding her of the day they discovered Ji Young's ability. He had promised her that he would become a hunter, that he would provide her with a better life. Yet, she had never wanted any of it. To her, his ability was a curse, an abomination. And now, as she looks at him, her worst fears are confirmed. This is a curse," she whispers, stepping back further. "You're not my son." Her words hit Ji-young like a blow to the chest. Desperation clouds his mind. "No," he shouts. "I'm still me. Please don't run from me." He rips himself apart, shredding the monstrous exoskeleton that surrounds him, exposing the raw, vulnerable flesh underneath. Blood sprays everywhere as he tears at his body. "See?" he says, his voice trembling. "I'm still me, Mother. You don't have to be afraid." But his mother doesn't stop. She turns and tries to run, her mind unable to process what she's witnessing. Ji-young, panicking, grabs her hand, stopping her in her tracks. She stumbles and falls, her fear mounting with every passing second. "Please don't run," Ji-young begs, his voice breaking. "I'm your son. I'm still your son." His mother, overcome with terror, reacts instinctively, punching him across the face. The blow doesn't hurt physically, but emotionally it's the final nail in the coffin. Ji-young freezes, his outstretched hand falling limply to his side. For the first time, he truly understands. His mother will never see him as her son again. Lucas, having followed Ji-young into the sewers, watches the scene unfold. His expression shifts to one of deep sorrow. "She's still alive," Lucas says quietly, as if to himself. "You lied in front of a righteous soul. You are impure, and you shall receive judgment for your sins." Before Lucas can act, Ji-young, in a surge of desperation, slashes upward with his bone blade, severing Lucas's head in one swift motion. Lucas's body crumples to the ground, leaving Ji-young standing amidst the chaos, his mother sobbing on the ground. Ji-young clenches his fists, his emotions in turmoil. But then, something strange happens. From Lucas' severed head, a glowing essence emerges. The ethereal energy flows through the air and into Ji-young's body. At first, he feels nothing, but then his movements become erratic, and his expression changes. A woman's voice echoes in his mind, cold and sinister. "Oh, what a delightful host you are," she purrs. The energy within Ji-young begins to take control, bending his will. His movements grow unnatural, his posture shifting as if he were a puppet on strings. "This body is strong," the voice continues, "stronger than Lucas's. And now it's mine." The entity within him begins to delve into his memories, savoring his pain and despair. She witnesses the night Ji-young's mother abandoned him. He had awoken to find her sneaking out of the house. When he asked where she was going, she didn't respond. Instead, she sprinted away, forcing Ji-young to chase after her. He tripped, scraping his knees, but his regeneration kicked in, healing him almost instantly. His mother, however, didn't stop. She looked back at him, her face filled with regret, but also resolve. Without another word, she disappeared into the night. The memory floods Ji-young's mind, and the entity relishes the anguish it brings. "How pitiful," she sneers. "Even your own mother couldn't stand the sight of you." But Ji-young doesn't succumb. Gritting his teeth, he fights back against the entity, reclaiming control of his body. "Get out," he growls, his voice filled with defiance. "This is my body, my pain. You don't belong here." The woman screeches in frustration as Ji-young's crimson energy surges, expelling her from his form. She materializes in front of him, her translucent figure trembling with rage. "You'll regret that," she hisses. But before she can act, Ji-young's blade flashes through the air, slicing her in two. The entity dissipates into nothingness, her presence erased. Ji-young turns back to his mother, who stares at him, still paralyzed with fear. "I'm sorry," he whispers, his voice breaking. "I never wanted this." From Lucas's body, a holy light begins to emanate, bathing the sewer in its glow. The light spreads outward, filling the entire area with a sense of peace and finality. In a flashback, Lucas stands amidst chaos, shouting for everyone to evacuate. His voice booms through the church as he urges the congregation to flee through the doors. His assistant pleads with him to leave as well, but Lucas refuses. "I must stay," he insists, his resolve unwavering. Just as a monstrous figure emerges, ready to attack, something extraordinary happens. A surge of divine energy courses through Lucas's body, and he awakens to his powers. In that moment, his vision fills with flashes of the past, the future, and the universe itself, a cosmic revelation far beyond human comprehension. Images of events he could not fully grasp flood his mind. Overwhelmed, he falls to his knees. With his hands clasped together, he gazes upward and whispers, "If this is your will, if it truly is your will, then I will gladly accept it." Back in the present, a radiant glow begins to emanate from Lucas's severed neck. Before Kang Ji-young's astonished eyes, Lucas's head reattaches itself to his body, the divine energy pulsating through him with renewed vigor. The transformation leaves Ji-young in disbelief, even more so when he sees Lucas radiating an otherworldly power, his presence almost celestial. Lucas addresses the heavens, his voice resonating with conviction. "I will accept the trials you have given me," he declares. "But why? Why have you burdened this child with such terrible pain?" He looks at Ji-young with genuine sorrow, holding him gently as a father might hold his son. The divine energy surges once more, and the exoskeleton covering Ji-young's body begins to crumble. The jagged bones fall to the ground, revealing his original human form beneath. For the first time in years, Ji-young looks like himself again, a battered, broken version, but human nonetheless. At that moment, the ground beneath them begins to tremble violently. A massive monster emerges from the depths, its grotesque form twisting and writhing as it lunges toward them. Without hesitation, Lucas activates his newfound power. A brilliant beam of light descends from the heavens, splitting the monster cleanly in two. The radiant energy continues to spread, illuminating the entire city, and revealing the terrifying truth that city is infested with countless monsters. But Lucas is undeterred. He cradles Ji-young in his arms and carries him to the rooftop of a nearby building, placing him there safely. Then, to Ji-young's astonishment, Lucas begins to ascend into the sky, his body glowing brighter with each passing moment. The man who had once been his enemy is now transforming into something extraordinary, a celestial knight of light. Lucas's transformation is not solitary. The sky above him glows as more radiant figures emerge, riding winged horses and descending toward the city. These warriors of light, armed with heavenly weapons, charge into battle against the invading monsters. A fierce clash ensues, with the knights striking down the creatures in bursts of blazing energy. Each strike obliterates the beasts, turning the tide of the battle. Ji-young kneels on the rooftop, watching the spectacle in awe. For the first time in his life, he feels the weight of something greater than himself, an overwhelming sense of both wonder and insignificance. The sight is not limited to Korea. Similar scenes unfold across the globe. In cities plagued by despair, the Knights of Light bring hope, aiding even those who may not deserve it. Meanwhile, in the United States, Lucas's son watches the events on a screen. Tears stream down his face as he recalls a memory of his father kneeling beside him outside the church. The boy had begged his father not to leave that day, clutching his hand desperately. Lucas had looked at his son with a heavy heart and said, "One day I must leave your side. When that time comes, you must learn to stand on your own." Back in the present, Lucas turns to Ji-young, his voice filled with compassion and sorrow. "A heavy fate awaits you, Kang Ji-young," he says. "You will endure more pain than you have ever known. The trials ahead will be cruel and relentless, but even so, keep your faith. Hold on until the very end." Lucas begins to fade, his body dissolving into light. As he vanishes, he reflects on the countless tears he has shed over the years. He remembers the hospital room where his wife lay smiling peacefully, even as their son wept inconsolably. That memory stays with him as he exhales his final breath, disappearing into the heavens. In the United States, Lucas's son gazes upward, sensing his father's departure. With a mix of sorrow and resolve, he whispers, "Goodbye, father." Elsewhere, Tae-soo stands amidst the frozen wasteland, a sinister smile spreading across his face. The Arctic beast lies defeated at his feet, its massive form reduced to icy ruins. Taesu's laughter echoes through the barren landscape, growing louder and more uncontrollable. "I was on the brink of death," he shouts, his voice filled with manic glee. "But now I've seen the power of the defeated." Taesu's gaze sharpens, his laughter subsiding into a cold, calculating smirk. "Ji-young," he mutters, his tone dripping with malice. "Just wait, I'm coming for you."
Taesu celebrates being alive as he was close to dying. He laughs like crazy as he begins to absorb the monster. At one point, Taesu remembers a scene from his childhood, specifically when he was talking to his brother. On that occasion, he asks if he really has to do it. His brother replies that the stronger he becomes, the more the guild will grow, and that it's all for their father's sake. However, the boy tries to refuse, but it's useless as his older brother orders him to do it. Then the brother uses an ability that creates a leash around the boy, forcing him to obey. Little Taesu starts coughing while repeating that he doesn't want to do it, begging to be left alone, pleading not to have to go. At that moment, it is revealed that the boy activated his abilities, generating diamond stakes that seem to be aimed at eliminating some people who were trapped. Back in the present, Taesu curses that memory. On the other hand, the Russian woman mentions that even Lucas helped and comments that she can't believe they managed to get rid of the monster. She praises him, saying it's impressive. Just as Taesu appears, she reminds him that, as she promised, she will give him half of the mana stone from the Arctic beast. However, Taesu responds that he consumed it entirely, leaving the woman doubtful about what he said. Taesu repeats that he fully absorbed the mana stone. This leaves the Russian woman incredulous as she states that his body shouldn't be able to withstand it. It is then that he launches an attack, but before reaching her, she uses her ability and asks him why. Why did he do such a thing? Taesu responds that there is someone he desperately wants to kill. Suddenly, a copy of Taesu appears behind her, as if it were a ghost, passing through the chair and asking her if she too could die. However, the woman moves a finger, causing Taesu's copy to explode. At that moment, Vladimir Rozana comments that with that mana stone, they could have strengthened Russia's hunters up to tenfold, but he wasted it for an absurd reason. Then the woman removes the hat she was wearing and asks if he doesn't want to fight for Russia, revealing a large wound on her head. Before he can respond, multiple copies of Taesu launch into the attack. However, it doesn't work as, with a simple gesture, the woman makes all the copies explode, splashing Taesu's companion with red liquid. This is how Rozana understands his answer. Meanwhile, Taesu uses abilities on his companion, and then throws her away from the Russian woman. Immediately afterward, the woman moves a finger and declares that he will now be eliminated. That simple gesture causes stones to move toward Taesu's companion. However, before they reach her, Taesu uses his copies to create a barrier and protect her. Then he begins to lose control while activating all the abilities he had stolen and attacking Rozana from every angle with different powers using his copies. Nevertheless, before all those attacks reach her, the woman snaps her fingers. That simple gesture was enough. All the copies and the powers that were about to be launched explode. The attack was so devastating that it looked like fireworks, when in reality, it was Taesu's clones exploding. However, the main body was still in front of her, but not for long, as shortly after, the woman created a mini black hole in the sky, starting to absorb everything, including Taesu. Before being absorbed by the hole, he remembered a moment from his childhood when he confessed that he had eliminated someone. That day, he added that no one should take another person's life. His friend called out to him just as he went down the slide. As he slid down, the boy screamed that he didn't want to kill anyone, repeating it as he slid. Back in the present, he screamed that he didn't want to be eliminated. However, it was revealed that there were multiple versions of Taesu all screaming the same thing, that they didn't want to die as they were absorbed by the black hole. Finally, it was shown that the original Taesu had created millions of clones to be absorbed, forming a slide with him. This allowed him to fall in the direction of the Russian woman while shouting that he was going to eliminate her. On the other hand, after Lucas disappears, Kang Ji-hyun lowers his head and begins to cry, revealing that he seems to regret what happened. However, something doesn't quite fit as he smiles and wonders what nonsense Lucas was saying. He reflects on what could be so terrible and so cruel. Finally, he concludes that his body has returned to normal, so everything is resolved. He adds that now he can go see his mother. Now he can be happy with her. Too bad someone crushes him before he can do anything. The man who crushes him observes something with doubt and asks, "What is that thing?" Just before the battle between Tae-soo and Rosanna, in the Russian president's office some years in the past, the president comments on a monster that remained unharmed even after a nuclear attack, mentioning it was like witnessing the beginning of the end of the world. He is on the ground, surrendered to the hands of fate. It is then that someone calls out. It is a younger version of Vladimir Rosanna, the former Russian Minister of Defense, who informs them that if they have enough mana, they can eliminate the monster. She adds that they only need to gather awakened individuals. However, the president responds that it is already too late and reveals he has launched the remaining missiles to various parts of the world. Screaming, he declares that now they will all die together. At that moment, a rain of missiles appears above them, heading toward various locations. Vladimir Rosanna begins to fly toward the missiles, reaching space. There, she uses her power to catch them, gathering them all into a giant hand. However, the missiles explode, generating a shockwave that reaches Earth, right where the Russian president is watching. After that, Rosanna returns to the president's office, slightly injured. She observes the deplorable state of the president, who, in a desperate gesture, begs for help, something Rosanna seems inclined to do. Trembling, she apologizes to the president. However, she then corrects herself and apologizes to her father, activating her power and causing him to explode. After that, a message arrives at the president's office informing them that Russia's indiscriminate missile launches have been confirmed. Because of this, the United States announces they will eliminate Russia immediately for the sake of world peace. This surprises Rosanna, who screams for them not to do it. She informs them that she is the Russian Minister of Defense and announces that the president is dead, and they surrender. But the man who appears to be the President of the United States tells them, "Go to hell." The already critical situation worsens as Rosanna's children arrive at the location where she is. She immediately tells them she had warned them not to come because it could be dangerous. Despite this, the little ones run to hug her, leaving her stunned. After that emotional moment, she calls her children by their names, Medov and Elisa. Kneeling, she tells them she will definitely protect them. Then she embraces them as a sign of comfort. Back in the present, she reflects on the promise she made to her son and daughter. She asks Tae-soo if he really believes that he can lose to someone like her. She activates her power, but nothing happens. This is because she was eliminated by Tae-soo even before the entire previous battle took place. It is revealed that he was leaving the area while absorbing the woman's powers. Elsewhere, in the district of awakened Russian residents, Rosanna's children asked if they would be safe from American hunters. A lady confirmed they would and added that they would win and return soon. This encouraged the children, who said they were also awakened and assured they could fight. The woman tells Medov and Elisa that everything will be fine, that the queen will protect them. Or at least that was what she was about to say, as at that moment, she explodes before the girls. It is revealed that the entire residential area was destroyed. In front of the girl was Tae-soo. The little one displayed a look of terror at the imposing figure of the young man who showed no trace of emotion. As Tae-soo walks away, the girl remains in shock, watching him as he fades into the distance. Before leaving completely, Tae-soo recalls the face of Kang Ji-hyun, stops, and after a brief pause, shakes his head. He activates his power, and the girl explodes. On the other hand, the man who landed on Kang Ji-hyun shows confusion and asks what is happening. Meanwhile, Kang Ji-hyun begins to regenerate. It is then that the man kicks him, throwing him off the building. Kang Ji-hyun tries to crawl desperately, calling out to his mother, but is crushed again. Despite everything, he continues regenerating and crawling on the ground, repeating the call for his mother. The man crushes his head once more, laughing and commenting that he finds it amusing. This cycle repeats several times. The man notices something peculiar about the young man and mentions that he has a strange rhythm, like the sound of a cicada. Then, mocking, he asks why an adult is crying for his mother. Enraged upon hearing those words, Kang Ji-hyun yells at the man, questioning him if he doesn't have a mother, and curses him. Amidst this, the man ignores Kang Ji-hyun's words, kicks him forcefully, sending him toward the red portal. This takes him back to the place he once fought to escape from. Then we see the scene where Kang Ji-hyun's mother wakes up. Upon waking, she asks, "Where am I?" She is told that she is in the Hunter Association. As the building continues to crumble, she is advised, "We should move to a safe place, the annex bunker." Suddenly, a crack appears in the ceiling, and Kang Ji-hyun falls through it. The healer president looks back, startled, and sees Ji-hyun lying beneath a fallen section of the building. Ji-hyun's mother turns to look, her eyes wide in horror. "Is this my son?" she whispers, terrified by the monstrous figure before her. Her face is frozen in fear. The scene shifts to the annex bunker, where the healer president gently asks her, "How are you feeling now?" But Ji-hyun's mother, still horrified, repeats, No, that thing, it can't be my son." She holds her head, trembling. The president calmly replies, "He is your son, Kang Ji-hyun, 23 years old. An accident occurred, and he got stuck in a blood gate. Although he escaped, he underwent monsterification. Since then, he has blocked the explosion of the blood gate and fought against the world's hunters." Despite the explanation, Ji-hyun's mother continues crying. The president moves closer and says softly, "He has done all of this to save you." The scene shifts back to Kang Ji-hyun, who is being repeatedly crushed and regenerates each time. The man standing over him watches with amusement, remarking about the rhythm of his regeneration. "It's like the sound of cicadas," he muses. Ji-hyun, screaming in agony, calls out desperately for his mother. The man sneers down at him and says mockingly, "You've grown into an adult, yet you're still whining about your mom?" Through gritted teeth, Ji-hyun snaps back, "Didn't you have a mother?" His defiance only angers the man, who kicks Ji-hyun forcefully into the red portal. As Ji-hyun disappears into the swirling gate, his eyes widen. He suddenly finds himself lying in bed in his childhood home. Confused, he wonders aloud, "Did I come back? Is this really my past?" He looks around and notices a shadowy figure. Tentatively, he calls out, "Mom, are you there?" When his mother turns to him, he is horrified to see that she, too, has transformed into a monster. Panic-stricken, he reaches for the red portal, but his memories begin to flood his mind, overwhelming him. He recalls asking his mother, "Are you okay?" Her gentle reply, "I'm fine," is etched into his thoughts. But he remembers how he blamed himself for his father's death. "Because of me, Father died," he had said through tears. His mother's response had been simple yet comforting. "Keep smiling. As long as you smile, everything will get better." Back in the present, Ji-hyun grits his teeth and cries out in pain as his body regenerates. He bears the agony, determined to keep moving forward. Emerging from the red portal, Ji-hyun locks eyes with the man who had kicked him in. The man senses an attack, but is too late. Ji-hyun, fully transformed into a monster, delivers a powerful kick, sending the man flying. "Oh, look at what you've done!" Ji-hyun roars. "I've become a monster again because of you. I just wanted to see my mom. It was my only chance. Why did you do this to me?" Ji-hyun's voice trembles with rage as he curses the man. The man backs away, trying to create distance, but Ji-hyun launches himself at him with unrelenting fury. The man quickly braces himself, leaping into the air to avoid the devastating attack. The scene shifts to China, where an ancient building looms in the distance. Inside, someone remarks, "That monster is on a different level. Even the American Lucas lost to him. Can we fight back?" China's #2 SSS rank hunter, Ling Zhuwei, scoffs at the question. "How absurd," she says dismissively. "Did you really think you would lose to that monster?" Meanwhile, back in the battle, Ji-hyun is on the brink of grabbing the man. The man summons a spear, a grotesque weapon that seems alive, pulsating with monstrous energy. Ling Zhuwei continues. In China, we quickly resolved the gate situation with our overwhelmingly high number of hunters. But then the hunters escaped the nation's control and united to start a new generation. However, they all died by the hands of just 2 people. Standing atop their corpses, Ling Zhuwei addresses his partner beside her, saying, "You're killing everyone, and I'm reviving them to make them into slaves. Is this how we're going to unify China?" The figure replies coldly, "Yes." And that's how China was unified. The reason it was possible was because of one person. This man now faces Kang Ji-hyun. With a menacing grin, he says, "I arrived here because I heard there was someone strong, illogical, and nonsensical strength. And it was really worth it." This is China's #1 SSS rank hunter, Luan Guang. However, to his shock, Ji-hyun, in a flash, slices him into pieces. Standing amidst the carnage, Ji-hyun growls, "So, you were just having fun here?"
But it was a clone of Ling Guang which was shattered into pieces. He strikes back at Kang Ji-hyun and confirms with attitude that he is really enjoying it. Due to his attack, the building behind Ji-hyun also cuts down into pieces. Multiple spears around him floating in the air, and he announces that it is really fun. But Ji-hyun again regenerates and emerges from the broken building and says to Ling Guang that he is also enjoying it, and hits him with a punch on his back, which makes a huge shockwave. But to surprise Ling Guang, hold the Ji-hyun hand and ask him that he did not get it all, and kicks Ji-hyun on the face, while saying that the strong entity that I was eager to fight against in here was supposed to be a monster, but you are just a human. But Ji-hyun coldly asks, "So what?" But Ling Guang says that he senses that your mana is definitely of a monster's and kicks him into another building. The building shattered into pieces. But Ling Guang confused and asked Ji-hyun that monster won't fight while protecting others. But you must have someone or something over there. But a creepy smile on Ji-hyun's face comes up, and he says that yeah, there is my mom who abandoned me and ran away, but I still love her a lot. Ling Guang, after hearing to Ji-hyun, says there must be some kind of story behind it. And he thinks about her backstory, that nothing's the same, my younger sister and I, ever since we were young. Men are accustomed to dream of being the strongest. We are ever ready to fight powerful enemies. If you are strong, then I will fight you and defeat you. And he makes his stance to fight. He declares that let's do this. As he strikes Ji-hyun, he calls out that this is really fun, but the spear he uses says it's hurt and scream in pain. But Ji-hyun strikes back at him, saying that I'm also having fun, but Ling Guang blocks his punch with his spear, but due to brutal force of Ji-hyun, the spear broke into half. As Kang Ji-hyun about to strike again, Ling Guang summons another spear, and about to strike with it, but the spear screams that please save me, as the spear approaches to attack Ji-hyun, strike at the spear with his fist and shatter it into pieces. But Ling Guang still have multiple spears floating above him. As Kang Ji-hyun looks onto his hand, he found that it looks like a human eye. Ling Guang explained it that it was an ego sword. A blacksmith made it for me using the corpses of hunters. Kang Ji-hyun, amazed to hear this, while launches himself to Ling Guang to attack him again. He says that it was really something cool. But the spears strike him and cuts his head off from his body. Kang Ji-hyun regenerates his head, but it is again cuts off. The cycle continue for a moment. Kang manages to attack Ling Guang, sending him back to the wall, where an old man appears. It is S-ranked blacksmith Hal Yakbong. Ling Guang looks at him, saying, "So you have arrived," and asked him, "Did you gather the corpses of the hunters?" Blacksmith replied back that yes, I have brought them with me, there's around 40. As Ling Guang fights with Ji-hyun, he says to Blacksmith that it all for you now to make a weapon for me. The blacksmith hand turns into a hammer, and he nodded that I understand, and make a deadly weapon with them, and start forging the weapon with the core. Ji-hyun looks in confused as he sees the core molding into a weapon and scream coming from them. The blacksmith, with sweat all over his body, come in saying that I made it a masterpiece for you. It looks like a huge flail, and the core scream out and calling Mom.
Brother?
What is this?
Kill me.
I'm scared.
Save me.
And the old blacksmith handed over the weapon to Ling Guang. And he thanks the old blacksmith for such remarkable weapon and attack with that weapon. A huge flail with crafted core looks so creepy, and Ji-hyun also stunned for a moment to see this. And the flail hits Ji-hyun. Voices from coming that I'm flying. It's hurt. Mom. Daughter? Is my daughter over there?
Uh,
I'm here. Daughter, where are you? I can't see you. Hearing all this, Jaehyung says wow. He grabs the mom and the daughter and smashes them into one another. Jaehyung's face looked so creepy as he says a happy family reunion. Ling Wang attacked Jaehyung again with that flail. The voices started coming from it that it hurts. Go away, don't touch me. Who is it? Hearing all those voices, Jaehyung says it's amazing. All the stupid bastards who were killed by monsters have gathered here. I've killed a lot of people like them, who were once alive. Whereas these people are already dead, they're easy to kill. But a sword about to hit Jaehyung, and Ling Wang announces that I try to record everything when fighting, so I bought an eye in Korea 5 years ago. This ego sword's mana is familiar, and he recalls about his childhood friend who lost his eyes because helping Jaehyung, and in the end killed by the hand of Jaehyung sadly. Ling Wang shows him that this is the owner of that eye. The memories of Jaehyung started to show to Ling Wang as he has that eye. His eyes widened to see Jaehyung past. And he says to Kong Jaehyung that you didn't even fight, and just ran away, and cursed him saying you despicable bastard, and after making multiple slashes at Jaehyung, he turned away saying just die. And he starts to walking away as Jaehyung cuts into pieces. But Jaehyung lost into his thoughts whereas hold his eyes and someone calls his name, Jaehyung. He looks through with fingers gap. It was his childhood friend, standing in front of him. He holds Jaehyung and says it's fine dude. We are friends, and Jaehyung crying tears falling from his voice. But a suddenly voice changes. Why? Why did you do that to me? When I helped you, why did you kill me? As Jaehyung screams in pain, multiple voices coming to his mind, and the face of his mother also comes in his mind where she was scared because of him, and she says just smile. Kong Jaehyung hold his face, and started to tear apart his face. But he regenerates again and again. Then he cuts of his head, but it regenerates again. Then again, he cuts his head off, but still it regenerates again. It's repeated several times, but every time Jaehyung cuts his head off, it regenerates again and again. Ling Wang looks back at him and sees that Jaehyung's still cutting his head off from his body. Jaehyung asked Ling Wang that you said you will kill me? As we see countless heads of Jaehyung where they're on ground. The scene shifts to China where Ling Guang's sister Ling Jue were informed that the Northern Hunters, and he Sauter paused. She asked him, what about the Northern Hunters, tell me. The Sauter tells her that we are annihilated. She was confusing to hear that what are you saying? And it's Taesu who defeated the Northern Hunters and absorbing their powers. In the frigid northeast of China, precisely in Hongjiang province, at the Black Dragon fortified castle, Taesu arrived. He exhaled deeply, watching his breath form plumes of white mist in the icy air. This cold weather, refreshing, he muttered, a faint smile playing on his lips. However, his moment of tranquility was short-lived. With a sudden surge of power, Taesu unleashed a devastating wave of energy, obliterating the entire castle in an instant. The ancient structure crumbled into nothing but rubble, a testament to his overwhelming strength. As the dust settled, Taesu began to sway, his expression twisting into one of pain and confusion. His body trembled uncontrollably. What's happening to me? He groaned. His companion, alarmed, rushed to his side. Taesu, stop this. You're overusing your power, she cried desperately, grabbing his arm. Her voice cracked with panic. It's enough. Please, you've already proven your strength. This madness, this hunger for power, it's tearing you apart. Her words struck a nerve, and Taesu's eyes glowed with rage. No, he screamed, his voice echoing like thunder. His mind was a storm of chaotic memories. A fragment of his past surfaced, the day he had cornered Kong Jaehyung. What's your abilities? Taesu had sneered, his tone mocking. Jaehyung, scratching his head awkwardly, revealed his exoskeleton, his bones extending outward like armor. It's an exoskeleton. Kinda gross, I know. Disgust flickered across Taesu's face. Gross, he snapped, his voice rising. You're disgusting. Without another word, he struck Jaehyung, sending him sprawling to the ground. He turned to leave, but paused when he heard a faint chuckle behind him. It is kinda gross. Jaehyung had laughed nervously, scratching the back of his head. Taesu spun around, his expression darkening. What did you just say? Back in the present, Kang Ji-hyung found himself facing Ling Guang. The battle began with a ferocious assault as Ling Guang struck with surgical precision. His spear moved like a blur, slicing through Ji-hyung's arm in one fluid motion. Before Ji-hyung could react, Ling Guang followed up with a relentless series of slashes, his weapon a whirlwind of destruction. Flesh and bone flew in every direction, and Ji-hyung's body exploded like a grotesque balloon of flesh and blood. Even as his body began regenerating, Ling Guang showed no mercy. He aimed his spear at Ji-hyung's freshly reformed eye, the strike sending him crashing into a nearby building. The force of the impact shattered the structure, sending debris cascading onto the streets below. Before Ji-hyung could fully recompose, Ling Guang was upon him again, slashing through his flesh with unrelenting ferocity. The battlefield was painted red with the remnants of Ji-hyung's body. After an intense flurry of attacks, Ji-hyung lay on the ground, surrounded by the tattered remnants of his own form. Ling Guang stood over him, his spear poised for a final, fatal blow. Despite missing half of his head, Ji-hyung managed to smile, his defiance unwavering. Ling Guang hesitated for only a moment before summoning more of his weapons. They descended like meteors, crashing into Ji-hyung and forming a massive crater at the point of impact. All that remained was a single arm of Ji-hyung. Slowly, it began regenerating, his body piecing itself together once more. Ling Guang clicked his tongue in frustration, driving his spear into the monster and hurling him into the air. With calculated precision, Ling Guang positioned himself above Ji-hyung and hurled his spear, impaling him through the chest and sending him plummeting into a nearby river. Ji-hyung sank beneath the surface, the icy water pressing in on him. He struggled to breathe, his lungs burning as he sank deeper. In his desperation, a memory surfaced, his mother's voice, gentle and soothing. "Smile," she had told him. "No matter what, keep smiling." A crazed grin spread across Ji-hyung's face as he lost what little air remained in his lungs. The water around him began to swirl violently. Suddenly, red portals opened in the depths, their energy converging on Ji-hyung. The river erupted into a massive whirlpool, and Ji-hyung emerged, completely transformed. His monstrous form was now even more grotesque and menacing, his aura radiating pure malice. Ling Guang, watching from the shore, tensed. He didn't have time to react before his head was severed in an instant, his body crumpling to the ground. Moments later, green light emanated from his severed parts, pulling his head and body back together. Ling Guang stood, glaring at Ji-hyung with renewed determination. "You're fast," he admitted, "but let's see if you can handle this." Though not fully regenerated, Ling Guang launched another attack. His spear struck Ji-hyung, causing his body to explode in a violent spray of blood and bone. Yet, Ji-hyung regenerated almost instantly, preparing a counterattack. Anticipating this, Ling Guang delivered a rapid succession of blows, each one sending Ji-hyung higher into the air. The battle continued until Ji-hyung was launched into the vacuum of space. In the zero-gravity environment, Ji-hyung's head detached from his body, plummeting toward Earth. The fiery re-entry caused his severed head to glow like a meteor, a grotesque smile still etched onto his face. Ling Guang watched, his expression one of grim admiration. "Beautiful," he murmured, captivated by the sight. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Taesu had been captured. Ling Guang's sister, Ling Zhuwei, approached him, her voice cold and commanding. "Was it you?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Were you the one who eliminated my babies?" After saying that, Lin Zhuwei turned her gaze toward Taesu, the realization dawning on her. He was the one who had annihilated her living armors, her army of resurrected dead. She raised her voice, her tone both mocking and disbelieving. "Do you truly believe a single hunter can stand against 100 million of my armors?" Taesu's response was immediate, his voice steady and resolute. "Yes," he said simply, before launching into an attack. His movements were precise and feral, buying himself just enough time to free the girl who accompanied him. He turned to her, his voice a mixture of desperation and determination. I can't give up now, not after coming this far, he muttered under his breath. As the armors relentlessly pursued him, Taesu refused to waver. His ultimate goal loomed in his mind like an unrelenting specter, the elimination of Kang Jae-hyun. This relentless determination stirred a memory from Taesu's past. He recalled sitting beneath a tree with his friends, the sunlight filtering through the leaves above. One of them leaned in, a serious expression clouding his face. There are too many hunters in the world now. They're fighting among themselves, his friend had remarked. Then, with a sudden shift in tone, he added, if we ever fall in battle, promise me, Taesu, absorb our powers. Taesu had been incredulous at the time. I can't do that, he had protested, his voice barely above a whisper. His friend smiled sadly, his words lingering like an echo. Even if we die, we'll live on through you. We're your friends, Taesu. We'll always be together. Back in the present, Taesu clenched his fists, his expression shadowed with regret. I failed you, he muttered to himself. The girl at his side, catching his words, looked at him with confusion. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice tinged with concern. Her question triggered another memory. He had said something similar that day beneath the tree. When that moment comes, I'll already be dead, Taesu had declared, his tone final. His friend had tried to protest, but Taesu had jumped down from the tree and turned to him with a menacing glare. Are you mad? No, his friend had replied softly. Back in the chaos of the present, Taesu shook his head as if to dispel the memory. I have to avenge them, he murmured, his voice raw with emotion. The girl watched him, her confusion deepening. Taesu, what's happening to you? She asked softly. But Taesu's focus had already shifted. He was striding alone toward Luanjue's formidable army. As China's second most powerful hunter, her abilities were unparalleled. She could resurrect the dead and enslave them to her will. Her army was a manifestation of her power, an extension of her dominance. She regarded Taesu with a cold, calculating gaze. Do you really think you can take on all of China? She asked, her voice dripping with contempt. Taesu didn't respond. His eyes burned with determination as he charged forward. Deep within her, however, Luanjue felt an unsettling unease. There was something wrong with Taesu, something beyond human comprehension. The ferocity of his attacks was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. This man, he's beyond SSS rank, she realized. He doesn't belong to any rank at all. Despite her fear, Luanjue ordered her warriors to attack. The resurrected dead surged forward, their lifeless eyes gleaming with her command. But their survival instincts betrayed them, and some began to falter, their movements hesitant. Return to the fight. Luanjue shouted, her voice laced with authority. I'm right here. I'll save you. She activated her power, dispelling their fear and instilling them with a renewed sense of purpose. With a deafening roar, the army surged toward Taesu again. But Taesu was relentless. He cut through the army like a scythe through wheat, his attacks devastatingly precise. One by one, the resurrected warriors fell, their fear ultimately unable to overcome his sheer strength. As Taesu defeated the last of her army, Luanjue stepped forward. She straightened her posture, her voice resolute. I am China itself. Do you think someone like you could ever defeat me? Yes, Taesu replied coldly, before lunging forward and severing her head with a single, decisive blow. In her final moments, Luanjue's life flashed before her eyes. She remembered her childhood, the day invaders had captured her family's land. She recalled her mother's defiance, standing tall as she faced her captors. This land belongs to the Manhwa sect now, the invaders had proclaimed. Her mother had refused to yield. This is where my family has lived for generations. I won't leave, she had declared, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Her defiance was met with a swift and brutal end. Her head fell to the ground, landing near her children. Her son, stoic and silent, had placed a hand on his sister's shoulder. Why are you crying? He had asked. They were weak. That's why they died. Her brother's words haunted her as she drew her final breath. Back in the present, she whispered, "Am I weak too?" "Yes," Tae-soo replied flatly, pulling a piece of candy from his pocket. He bit down on it, the crunch echoing like the final punctuation to her life. Meanwhile, Kang Ji-hyun was locked in his own battle. He landed a perfectly timed strike, the impact sending his opponent careening into a red portal. Ji-hyun smiled darkly as he watched. "Looks like you're going for a ride," he muttered, the grin never leaving his face. Grabbing Ji-hyun's leg in midair, with a sinister grin, he hung precariously over the swirling abyss of the red portal, his grip unyielding. Ji-hyun, reacting instinctively, swung to cut off Lingguang's hand. But before he could strike, Lingguang unleashed his poison power, sending a lethal toxin surging through Ji-hyun's body. The venom spread rapidly, leaving him momentarily paralyzed. Lingguang took advantage of this brief window and began to climb out of the portal. As he escaped, Lingguang paused to glance back at the chaotic vortex. Awe crossed his face as he muttered, "Is this where you came from?" His tone carried a mixture of disbelief and admiration. "No wonder you're so strong," he added, his voice almost reverent. Lingguang leaped into action, fueled by his renewed determination. His voice rang out, full of ferocity. "You will be the first to feel the full force of my special poison." He launched himself at Ji-hyun with startling speed, embedding his hand, seething with toxins, into Ji-hyun's chest. "This poison," Lingguang declared triumphantly, "is a combination of every lethal toxin in the world. It will intoxicate every cell in your body and make them explode." Ji-hyun froze, his body unresponsive. Lingguang taunted him further. "How does it feel? Can you still fight?" For a moment, it seemed as though Ji-hyun was defeated, motionless and vulnerable. But then, the red portal pulsed violently, sending a surge of energy into his body. His eyes snapped open, burning with renewed intensity. With a guttural roar, Ji-hyun attacked Lingguang, his strength amplified by the portal's power. The impact sent Lingguang staggering backward. As he steadied himself, an unfamiliar sensation washed over him, a warmth that was oddly nostalgic. He reflected briefly on his childhood, recalling the sweetness of a candy he had tasted for the first time, the comforting smile of his father, and the thrill of his first victory in battle. Each subsequent victory had felt less meaningful as the numbers climbed, his second, third, and fourth victories blending into the billions he would claim. Yet, in this moment, standing against Ji-hyun, Lingguang felt something surpassing all of those empty triumphs. Shaking off his reverie, Lingguang activated his power, unleashing a tornado of poison that tore through the battlefield. The storm's ferocity consumed everything in its path, disintegrating both Ji-hyun and Lingguang's bodies into fragments of flesh and energy. As the poison tornado raged, memories of a woman's confession surfaced in Lingguang's mind. She had once stood before him, declaring her love with conviction. Yet, even then, he had felt disconnected, questioning what love truly was. In the splendor of his palace, surrounded by concubines, he had felt nothing but emptiness. One of the women had broken the silence with a soft laugh, tears glistening in her eyes as she spoke with quiet certainty. "Someday, you'll understand what love really is." These fragmented memories collided with the chaos of the present as the energies from the red portal began to merge Lingguang and Ji-hyun's disintegrating forms. Their bodies and memories intertwined in a surreal fusion. For a fleeting moment, the two warriors shared an unspoken connection. Their pasts, pain, and emotions blended, creating an understanding that transcended words. They even smiled, an unsettling harmony in the midst of destruction. But destiny intervened. A massive fragment of the battlefield, hurled into the air by the tornado, crashed down with devastating force. The fused forms of Lingguang and Ji-hyun were obliterated, leaving behind only scattered remnants of their flesh across the battlefield. Meanwhile, in a quieter corner, Ji-hyun's mother watched the scene unfold. Her recovery had been slow, but her demeanor was calmer than when she last saw her son. Now accompanied by a companion, She observed the chaos with a mix of awe and fear. As she noticed the injured young man by her side, her concern overcame her caution. Rushing toward him, her voice trembled with a blend of reprimand and affection. "Do you have any idea how much I've worried about you?" The young man looked up, his expression distant and haunted. "Why did we end up this way?" he asked, his tone a mixture of confusion and despair. Her heart broke at his words, and she embraced him tightly, as if trying to shield him from the weight of his memories. "I only wanted to be loved," he choked out, his voice breaking with emotion. The woman's own tears fell as she held him, feeling the depth of his pain. Yet something in the distance caught her attention. A figure approached, moving with deliberate slowness. She turned, her heart racing with a mix of unease and curiosity. As the figure extended a hand toward her, she couldn't help but wonder, who is she? It was Hanem holding a severed head in her hands, her expression cold and determined as she faced Tisu. "Yudo," she called out firmly, her voice cutting through the air. "What are you doing here?" Tisu turned to face her, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Hanem continued, her voice steady despite the grim situation. "I heard you're gathering forces to get revenge on Kang Ji-hyung." Tisu smirked, his gaze sharp. "You want to become my strengths?" "It's not just me," Hanem replied, her tone unwavering. "I've heard there's a hunter in your team who can bring dead Awakened back to life. Please save this person." She held up the head she was carrying, revealing the face of Prime Minister Judo. "We are Japan's 2 strongest hunters. We'll be very helpful to you." Tisu laughed darkly, his amusement echoing in the air. "Okay," he said, his grin widening. As the ritual was performed, Prime Minister Judo's eyes opened slowly, his gaze hazy with confusion. The first thing he saw was Haneme's severed head lying before him, her lifeless eyes staring into nothingness. Tisu sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "What's up, my honey?" Judo's face twisted in rage as he rose, ready to strike at Tisu. But before he could land a blow, his head was severed in one swift motion. Tisu stood over Judo's lifeless body, his expression cold as he began to absorb the Prime Minister's powers. Memories flooded into his mind, fragments of Judo's past playing out in vivid flashes. Meanwhile, back at the battlefield, the clash between Lingguang and Kang Ji-hyung raged on. Ji-hyung regenerated slowly, his twisted body pulling itself together as he began to walk toward Lingguang. At the same time, Lingguang's own regeneration progressed, though neither of them was fully healed. Both warriors charged at each other, smashing their heads together with a sickening crack. Blood sprayed from their wounds, but they both grinned through the pain. "This is really fun," they said in unison, their voices filled with a shared madness. Lingguang's mind wandered back to his past. He recalled his father, a stern yet broken man who stood over him, trembling with frustration. "Be strong," his father had commanded, his voice cracking under the weight of his tears. "So you won't experience this humiliation again. Become so strong you can beat your father." In the memory, Lingguang clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. And in the heat of that moment, he had done the unthinkable. He killed his father. As his father's lifeless body crumpled to the ground, Lingguang struck a victorious pose, his voice breaking with a mix of triumph and disbelief. "I win," he shouted, only to realize his father was truly gone. Back in the present, the weight of his memories consumed him. Lingguang sank to his knees before Kang Ji-hyung, his head bowed in defeat. "I admit it," he said hoarsely, his voice laced with regret. "I've lost." Gal Yakbong, the blacksmith, arrived at the scene, his hammer hand glinting ominously. He approached Lingguang, his expression grim. "So, you've finally been defeated," he said, his tone void of sympathy. He raised his hammer high, ready to strike Lingguang down once and for all. But before the blow could land, poison seeped through his body, paralyzing him. Gal Yakbong collapsed to the ground, dead on the spot. Ji-hyun looked around the battlefield. Everywhere there was bloodshed. Bodies lay scattered, the ground slick with crimson. His face twisted with despair as he took in the devastation. Suddenly, a rod pierced through Ji-hyung's head. His body jerked violently as he turned to see a heavily injured man standing behind him, his eyes filled with hatred. From the ruins, the victims of the bloodshed began to appear. Their faces were filled with rage and anguish as they swarmed Ji-hyung, beating him relentlessly. A truck barreled through, running him over, leaving his body as little more than a mangled heap of flesh on the ground. I can't meet my mom now," Ji-hyung whispered, his voice trembling with despair. A man stepped forward, a chainsaw revving in his hands. "It's time to die," he snarled, moving toward Ji-hyung. Through his blurred vision, Ji-hyung saw a familiar figure running toward him. It was his mother. She pushed through the angry mob, desperate to save her son. "Mom," Ji-hyung croaked, his eyes filled with tears. But just as she reached him, someone in the crowd struck her on the head with a stone. She collapsed to the ground, blood streaming from the wound. Ji-hyung's world shattered. Tears streamed down his face as he screamed, his voice echoing with pain and fury. On the other hand, after Taisoo absorbed the memories and powers of the strongest hunter in Japan, he began to speak nonsense. More specifically, he kept repeating the conversations that the hunter, whose powers and memories he had just absorbed, had had in his life. His companion, seeing that he was distracted in this sea of memories, began to approach him. As she did, she activated her power and apologized, thinking about sealing him again. She didn't want to lose him. That brief moment made her recall something from her childhood, which seemed to be in her house. She witnessed someone being cursed, revealing that a man was beating his wife, blaming her for what had happened in his life. The woman, clinging to her husband's leg, begged for mercy. It was then that Yeju revealed that her mother was autistic, which caused the doors of help from people and awakenings to be closed, resulting in a complete catastrophe for them. This happened because her mother, who couldn't control her abilities, ended up eliminating her husband in an instant. However, due to her mental instability and because she had children, she received a suspension of sentence. She thought this was for the best, but her brother didn't agree. After that tragic day, he began working away from home, bringing violence into the house. As days went by, he became more brutal and violent. It was then, around this time, that Yeju had her awakening. She wondered if, by becoming a hunter and earning a lot of money, she could escape that hell. But one night, while lying in bed thinking about it, a noise suddenly woke her up with her brother very close to her. She quickly began to flee, but her pursuer reached her, hitting her foot and making her fall. He cursed her and began to beat her. They were both outside the house, and the girl screamed for help while trying to defend herself from her brother's blows. But he wasn't just planning to beat her, he was trying to do something worse, and Ella struggled desperately to stop him. It was then that her mother heard the screams and lunged at what was her son while yelling for him to stop. But the monster kicked her, telling her to get away. The kick was so strong that the woman sadly hit her head against the ground. Her daughter, seeing her mother unmoving, began to crawl toward her. When she reached her, she noticed what her supposed brother had done. He, without showing a clear reaction, just said that what was happening was really bad. Immediately, he lunged at his sister while she cursed him. After these events, she might have been in the park with Taisoo when he revealed that he had eliminated someone again. The boy wondered how many more people he would have to eliminate for all of this to end, revealing his sadness about the ability he possessed and the parents who forced him to use it. It was then that Yeju called him, explaining that she had awakened her own abilities and could control the magical power, adding that she was able to contain her powers. He asked if that was true, but before she could answer, he made it clear that before doing that, he wanted her to eliminate one more person. Revealing his swollen face from the blows, he made his way to Yehu's house, knocking on the door. Just then, the young man opened the door while asking about his sister, who hadn't arrived yet. Taisoo wasted no time and pierced him with a diamond sword, causing the young man to fall lifeless while absorbing his memories. This left Taisoo somewhat puzzled, even more so when someone called him. It was his brother who was asking what he was doing while activating his ability and materializing a chain around his neck. His brother began to choke him with the chain, asking if he hadn't had enough, questioning him about whether the killing hadn't been enough for him. Without his brother noticing, Yeju activated her ability and launched an attack. Unfortunately, Taisu's aggressor managed to grab her hand, preventing her from completing the attack. Seeing this, Taisu threw himself at his brother, making him lose his balance and fall. This moment was seized by his friend, who quickly placed her hand on him and activated her ability, beginning to seal his powers. Taisu could only watch as the chains began to disappear. Just before his brother could say anything, Yeju apologized and created a huge diamond stake, piercing what had once been her brother. Both young people approached, and, a little scared, Yeju asked what they were going to do now. But Taisu told her not to worry because he would protect her for the rest of his life. After this flashback, we return to the present, where Taisu is in shock from what happened. Before Ella could reach him, he grabbed her hand and asked what she was doing. Immediately afterward, he made her explode and cursed her. Before his companion could say anything, in his desperation for what he had done, he tried to put some pieces of his friend together while crying. He immediately activated his ability to resurrect hunters and began to raise a hand from the center of the red pit. That hand asked if he was its master. Dominated by the despair of what was happening, he screamed so intensely that he vomited for what he had done. Lying on the ground, he began to hit his head repeatedly. After a while, he got up, activated his power of multiplication, creating several copies of himself and sending each one flying across the world with the goal of each taking a red portal with their own hands. With an expression of fury and anguish, he began to close the portals one by one. On the other hand, the president of the Hunter Association and Jiyoung Mother approached the crowd of people who were about to eliminate the monster completely, or at least try to. This caught the attention of everyone present, since it was uncommon to see a rank S healer in such places. However, what surprised everyone the most was that the woman accompanying the healer called out to the remains of the monster that lay on the ground, saying, "Son." This caused someone to throw a stone, which was observed by Jiyoung. On the other hand, many of the people there were calling out to the healer to cure them because they were in a lot of pain. But instead of healing them, the woman grabbed one of them by the shoulder and told her not to worry. At that exact moment, something happened. A threatening presence invaded the whole place. The hunter declared that in any case, everyone would die. It was then revealed that Jiyoung was complete and had taken on another appearance, one less human and more monstrous. His mother, seeing him, regained her composure and remembered the moment he was born. She began to approach him, trembling with each step she took toward her son. She unlocked a memory and, when she was finally in front of him, saw him as the little boy he once was. She remembered the moments when she used to caress his head, but now she couldn't do that anymore. The monster looked at her and asked if she was his mother. The woman closed her eyes and confirmed that she was his mother, with tears in her eyes, declaring that she didn't care how he looked and that she loved him. Right after saying this, someone grabbed the sides of his face and, in the end, broke it as if it were paper. It was Taisu who committed this atrocity. Unlike the last time, when he attacked the woman, this time he fulfilled his mission and did it right in front of her son. The son didn't have time to react as Taisu quickly cut off his head. Everyone present praised that Hant Taisu from the Kun Kong Guild was still alive. At that moment, Taisu informed them that he had closed all the portals of the world and that what was behind Jiyoung was the last one. At that very moment, Jiyoung began regenerating, but Taisu, using some of his abilities, pushed him toward the red door. With one last glance, he said goodbye to Jiyoung, who began to fall back into the portal with tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, everyone praised Hantaisu, and he closed the portal. Jiyoung fell to the ground inside the portal, with the unforgettable memory of Taisu eliminating his mother and closing the red portal. This immediately began the attack of the monsters from within that dimension, directed toward Jiyoung. The monsters begin to attack Jiyoung. With great effort, he manages to defend himself, eliminating each creature while maintaining an expression of rage and pain. Every movement reflects his desperation and constant struggle to stay alive in a hostile and relentless environment. At a critical moment, when more monsters appear, Jiyoung slips and falls to the ground. When he raises his gaze, his vision is filled with multiple faces identical to Taisu's, each one with the same expression of mockery and contempt. This vision fuels his anger even more. With a dark look and brutal determination, Jiyoung launches himself against these figures, cutting them in half one by one. His expression shows absolute hatred, making it clear that the little humanity he had left is completely gone, consumed by pain and rage. However, his fury has little time to manifest as a gigantic monster crushes him with a stomp. But Jiyoung, relentless, pierces the monster's foot from the inside, emerging from the wound he himself caused, drenched in red liquid and with a fierce determination in his eyes. When he looks toward the horizon, he is faced with an endless sea of monsters advancing toward him. That devastating scene makes it clear that there is no escape, no place to seek refuge. Despite this, Jiyoung makes a firm decision. The only option left is to fight. Surrender is not an option, and death for him is simply impossible. 6 years have passed since that fateful day. The news reports that 6 years ago, a tragic incident occurred that claimed the lives of countless people, a case known as the Blood Gate out of control. Back then, the national hero, the hunter Han Taisu, managed to save many, earning the admiration of all. However, when he hears the broadcast, Taisu, darkened and filled with rage, grabs a diamond stake and destroys the television without hesitation. In the same room, he is accompanied by 2 beautiful ladies. One of them, surprised by his reaction, dares to ask why he is acting this way, to which he responds harshly, asking her to be quiet. The other woman, visibly uncomfortable, comments softly that he is too cold and distant. These words seem to ignite a spark within him, awakening a long-held fury. Immediately, he activates his power, while his mind floods with painful memories of what happened with his only friend. This act triggers a terrifying outcome. The woman who made the comment explodes violently, bathing everyone present in thick red liquid. The other woman, terrified by what has just happened, begins to scream desperately and runs away from the place, calling for help. In the midst of this chaos, a new figure enters the scene. It is Lee Yumin. With a determined look, she approaches the hunter and firmly tells him that acting this way will solve nothing. Her tone, though soft, is filled with authority that seems to partially calm the tension in the room. With steady steps, Yumin approaches him without showing any fear. She climbs onto the bed where he is lying, still with his face hardened by rage and pain. Then, in a low voice but with determination, she informs him that the only one who can heal him is her. Activating her powers, she places her hand on his head. That simple gesture seems to deeply relieve Taisu, as within seconds, tears begin to slide down his cheeks, showing the emotional burden he carries with him. He vividly remembers the moment when he freed Jiyoung. Everyone present, witnesses to that act, broke into praise and celebrations. However, Taisu paid them no attention. The only thing he did was disappear, leaving behind an atmosphere of confusion and bewilderment among those who witnessed his departure. In his solitude, he teleported to the park where he used to meet his friend. There, he remained under the rain for a long time, with the water soaking his body and soothing the burning of his emotions. It was then that someone arrived, Lee Yumin. Without hesitation, she covered him with her cloak, offering not only shelter but also a gesture of support in his moment of vulnerability. After that memory, the scene returns to the present. With a tired voice, Taisu comments on how someone who was once an ally of Kong Jiyoung ended up in such a desolate situation. The woman, with an intriguing tone, asks if he doesn't wish to see him again. Confused, Taisu responds with another question. Who? Yumin, staring at him, answers without hesitation. Kong Jiyoung. These words leave him completely stunned. Then Yumin adds coldly that 6 years ago, he eliminated Jiyoung's mother in front of his eyes. Not only that, but he didn't even fight against him. He simply threw him into the red portal and closed it, sealing his fate with a definitive gesture. This generates some curiosity in her, and she questions him if he was afraid of that monster who ended up eliminating all the SS-ranked beings. The question enrages him to the point of almost lunging at the healer, grabbing her forcefully and confessing angrily that yes, he wants to see him again, to destroy him completely. He also reveals that for that reason, he tried to open the red portal again and again, as he was curious to know if Jiyoung was suffering. However, he failed in all attempts. It is then that Yumin, with an unsettling calmness, mentions that she has something interesting to tell him. She explains that according to the laws of the universe, the world works cyclically, entering a state of destruction, and during these times, something known as the gate appears. Over time, one of these gates ended up connecting to hell, and that is what they call the Blood Gate. She then adds that he threw Kong Jiyoung into hell but warns that the administrator of that place will find him. She informs him that he will soon see him again, which leaves Taesu shocked and visibly disturbed. Furious, he demands an explanation about what she is telling him. However, Yumin doesn't respond. Instead, she simply asks him to wait, as he too needs to survive until that day. With that, she starts to get off the bed. But Taesu, unable to contain himself, calls her and grabs her by the wrist, demanding to know how she knows all this. Yumin begins to laugh, stares at him, and with an enigmatic smile, asks if he is curious. This is where she confirms that she will tell him everything. She begins by explaining that in hell, there is an administrator named Fail. She explains that if all the portals in the world turned into red portals, Fail would ascend to a higher existence capable of leading the Infernal Legion and destroying the world. However, despite having destroyed millions of worlds throughout time, this time was different. For the first time, he saw no portal open, as they had all been completely closed. In the present, the healer, Reeve, explains that the creation of portals is an unchanging law of the universe. Even for someone like Fail, it is impossible to open new portals by himself. However, when Jiyoung managed to escape hell, it caused a fracture in the dimension. That fracture in the fabric of space could allow him to open portals if he were to receive Fail's power. For this reason, when Jiyoung fell again, Fail tried to locate him, tracking the magical energy with the hope of finding him. But his search ended in absolute failure because at that moment, Jiyoung was no longer the same. He had transformed into a demonic beast hidden behind a new identity. However, after 6 long years, Fail finally located his whereabouts. At that very moment, the sky turned an intense red, as if foretelling a monumental event. The healer let out a faint laugh, her expression reflecting a mix of irony and acceptance of what is happening. Meanwhile, Taesu, frowning, observed the scene without taking his eyes off it, analyzing every detail cautiously. But before that phenomenon could take place, Jiyoung, with a somber expression, spoke to his mother. He confessed that he had had a nightmare. His voice, filled with unease, described in detail how his mother had been cut in half, losing her life in a brutal and irreversible way. He then remembered his return to hell, a journey from which he could never truly escape. There, he was consumed by despair and transformed into a demonic beast. 6 long years had passed since that fateful day, 6 years of suffering, of inner struggle, and torment that never ceased. He reflected on the offer he had received. If he accepted the power of the being who had visited him, he would have the chance to escape. However, freedom came at an unimaginable price, the destruction of the world. He wondered if he had lost his sanity, if he truly longed to escape at any cost. Inside, the desire to leave and take vengeance burned with an uncontrollable intensity. He could not forget that monster named Han Taesu. With a firm voice, he declared his intention to make him pay for all the pain he had caused him. At first, he thought of returning the suffering in the same way, replicating his cruelty. But the idea soon evolved. Reflecting, he realized it wasn't enough. He wanted his punishment to be even more painful. He wanted the suffering to consume him completely, with no respite, imagining with delight the moment when he could twist his innards while he was still alive, prolonging his agony until the very last second. The person on his right broke the silence with a simple observation, saying that this was cruel. Jiang remained unfazed. He knew he couldn't eliminate innocent people, his moral code hadn't completely vanished. The person on his left nodded, acknowledging the truth of his words. However, Jiang asked an unexpected question, his tone filled with resentment and bitterness. He asked if they wanted to know something. Without waiting for an answer, he confessed that when he was a child, he too was innocent. The memory of his father tormented him. He had lost his life when a truck ran a red light, taking away the opportunity to be with him. Later, in his school years, the monster Han Taisu began to beat him mercilessly. In his mind, the question kept repeating, what had he done to deserve all of this? The memories kept coming, one after another. He spent 5 long years trapped in the red portal dimension, 5 years of suffering and survival. When he finally managed to escape, he eliminated everyone who stood in his way. But it wasn't an act of gratuitous cruelty, it was self-defense. The day he eliminated the Japanese hunters, he did it for one purpose: to save his mother. He couldn't let them hurt her. What happened with Lucas was different. He had lost his reason. He went completely mad, and though he had the power to help him, he also remembered the Chinese idiot who had unexpectedly appeared. If it hadn't been for him, he would now be living in peace with his mother. He had no choice but to eliminate him. But none of this compared to the worst of his memories, the moment when his mother was cut in half. It didn't matter what he had done before or if he had made different decisions. At the end, Han Taisu would have gone to eliminate her anyway. On the screen in front of him, Jiang appeared again, calling for his mother. With a firm voice, he declared that he would only speak the truth, and he did. He confessed that he had eliminated many innocent people. Now, he just wanted everyone to be eliminated. His thirst for vengeance was absolute. The person on his right, unable to contain himself, muttered that it was too much. Then, the cinema screen showed an unexpected ending. The credits began to roll, with every recognition going to Kong Jiang. For a moment, he laughed, but that laughter quickly faded. His expression changed, and his rage exploded. He cursed everything that had happened to him. It was at that moment when the truth was revealed. The people accompanying him were not mere figures in his mind. They were halves of his mother, fragments of what she once was. Even with this revelation, the story on the screen showed a post-credit scene. A version of Taisu said that the world had lived in peace for a long time, and Han Taisu was considered the savior of the nation. Then, he himself spoke, saying that everyone had been happy, and if nothing existed, it would be much better. His words left no doubt. He was referring to Jiang. However, the projection had not ended. On the screen, the drawing came to life and asked one last question. Has the movie ended? Jiang responded coldly, cutting it in half with a precise movement. After that, his mother, with an empty expression, commented that in the end, nothing remains. Her voice sounded muted, as if the certainty of her words weighed more than reality itself. Instead of answering immediately, Jiang let out a brief, joyless laugh. Then, without taking his eyes off, he continued his path. As he walked away, he slowly turned, casting one last glance at his mother. His lips moved, saying that he already knew. At that very moment, tears began to roll down his face, silent and treacherous. It is then that we return to the moment when the sky turned red, as a deep and dark crack had formed. That crack, glowing with a pulsating crimson light, birthed a red portal. From it emerged Jiang, or at least something resembling him. His figure was almost recognizable, but his essence had changed. Now, he was a distorted version of himself, a monstrous shadow of what he once was. At that instant, his eyes met Taisu's. A tense silence filled the place, charged with anticipation. Taisu, without hesitation, seized the fraction of a second he had and activated his powers. In an instant, his body began to multiply, blurring in the air until it became an army of clones, ready for battle. The atmosphere changed abruptly, the pressure in the air intensified, and numerous red portals opened in the sky, tearing through the fabric of space. Countless creatures, spawned from the very depths of hell, emerged. Their eyes gleamed with a hungry glow. An entire army rose behind Jiyoung, aligning in his favor. Nightmarish creatures that roared with a thirst for destruction. Before them, Taisu's clones prepared, aligning with precision. There were no words, no time for doubt.
Both sides were ready.
The battle was about to begin. The battle begins with a clash of attacks that causes an enormous explosion. In the midst of the chaos, Jiyoung is atop a dragon, which begins to channel a massive amount of energy as it prepares to launch its attack against Taisu. The energy concentrates in its mouth, vibrating with overwhelming power. Finally, the blast is fired, sweeping away Taisu's clone and everyone on the ground. The devastation is absolute, as the bone dragon exhales a destructive energy breath that consumes everything in its path. However, another Taisu observes the scene from a distance, determined, activating his diamond powers. His body begins to envelop in a resilient crystalline armor. Under Jiyoung's watchful eyes, the blue-haired Taisu shapes a majestic diamond dragon. The creature roars and takes flight, heading toward the bone dragon with incredible speed. At a decisive moment, Taisu uses the momentum from his action to charge at his enemies, wielding a diamond staff. With a swift and precise move, he strikes directly at Jiyoung, unleashing a fierce battle. But the confrontation doesn't stop there. They continue exchanging blows with such intensity that, in a matter of moments, their fight takes them beyond the atmosphere, into the void of space. Their battle is so fierce that it spills into unexpected places, destroying everything in its wake and putting innocent lives at risk. The colossal, devastating blows leave scars on the terrain, bringing back the echoes of old battles Taisu had fought in the same place. But the chaos doesn't end there. In the middle of the fight, something even more terrifying begins to happen. From the horizon, multiple intense red portals begin to open over the earth. From them emerge grotesque monsters, mercilessly advancing. Just as one of them is about to devour an innocent child, a hunter intervenes with overwhelming speed. It is Lucas's son. In the blink of an eye, he appears among the rubble and, without hesitation, saves the child from the beast's claws. With lethal precision, he splits the monster in two, not giving it a chance to react. His movements are precise and ruthless, worthy of someone who has inherited his father's formidable powers. Without wasting time, the young hunter leaps into combat, facing the hordes of monsters emerging from the portals with unwavering determination. Meanwhile, the fight between Taisu and Jiyoung reaches a new critical point. At a decisive moment, Jiyoung manages to land a precise blow on Taisu, forcing him to retreat. For the first time, without losing the advantage, Jiyoung summons multiple red portals around him. From them emerge countless twisted and sharp bone arms, extending like tentacles, ready to trap Taisu in their lethal grip. But Taisu is not willing to fall so easily. With a cold, calculating look, he activates his special ability, the power to resurrect fallen hunters. A cold wind envelopes the battlefield as a figure rises from the shadows. It is the Ice Hunter. Barely revived, the hunter acts with deadly precision. In a fleeting motion, she grabs Jiyoung's ankle and, with a single touch, freezes him instantly. Her icy eyes meet the bone monster's gaze. In that brief exchange of looks, a silent thread is sealed between them. But this is just the beginning. Alongside the revived hunter, more shadows emerge from ancient hunters, like specters of unfinished vengeance. They advance with the sole purpose of reaching Jiyoung. For a few crucial seconds, Jiyoung stands still, trapped between the ice and the shadows of his enemies. This is the opportunity Taisu has been waiting for. Without losing a moment, he breaks free from the bone arms and with a devastating surge, leaps into the air toward his rival, activating his powers. Taisu concentrates all his energy on the bone monster's neck, ready to strike with deadly precision. However, something surprises him. The power he invokes to cut Jiyoung's neck is effortlessly trapped by him, avoiding any damage. Before Taisu can react, Jiyoung counters with a brutal blow to his face, sinking his face into the ground. The World Alliance rushes to his rescue. As they pull him from the water, John Gucci looks at him with firmness and, with a voice full of determination, reminds him that 6 years ago, he saved the world and became the hero everyone revered. Now more than ever, he tells him to fight as he did in the past, assuring him that all the hunters present will lend their strength to defeat their common enemy. But their union is short-lived. Without hesitation, Taisu accepts the power offered, only to betray them in the very next instant. In a single move, he eliminates all the hunters around him, one by one, without showing a hint of doubt or mercy. Ji-young watches the scene with disbelief as, before his very eyes, the monster named Taisu begins absorbing the powers of the fallen hunters, feeding on their energy like an insatiable creature. Still, Ji-young quickly wonders if this is truly Taisu's ability. But before receiving a clear answer, Taisu crushes him with overwhelming gravitational power, forcing him to kneel under the immense pressure. The bone monster, witnessing this, begins to laugh uncontrollably. His laughter echoes like a disturbing sound, filled with sinister joy. Then, with a voice laced with venom, he reveals a truth that shakes the hunter to his very core. Taisu had killed his father with his own hands. The impact of these words ignites a fury in Taisu's heart. His eyes burn with rage, his muscles tense as he screams in fury, demanding that Ji-young be silent. But in a swift and lethal movement, Ji-young's sword slices through the air, and in an instant, Taisu's head falls to the ground. Before Taisu closed his eyes completely, his mind took him back to his childhood, to a memory he could never erase. He saw himself as a fragile and fearful child, apologizing to his father for a reason beyond his control, being born as an unawakened being. His father's response was immediate and cruel. Without a word, he slapped him hard, sending him to the floor. Taisu barely had time to recover when his father suddenly turned toward his mother. What followed was even worse. His small ears filled with the screams of pain from his mother as his father beat her mercilessly. Desperate, the boy, hiding, covered his ears with both hands, trying to block out the sounds, clinging to the hope that if he didn't hear them, maybe the horror would disappear. But there came a point when it was impossible to ignore. His body trembled with fear, but his heart beat with an unknown rage. And then, without thinking twice, he grabbed a knife and threw himself at his father with all his strength, jumping and plunging the blade into his father's neck. Blood burst out immediately, but the most shocking thing happened in the next instant. He felt a wave of energy coursing through his body. His father's powers transferred to him, and for the first time in his life, Taisu experienced what it meant to possess that power. His surprise was immense, but his mother's was not the same. Even though her son had saved her life, she didn't look at him with gratitude, but with something colder, more distant. Without saying a word, she made her decision. She fled, leaving behind her home and her children, as if she couldn't bear what she had just witnessed. It was then that his brother appeared, calling Taisu by his name. His gaze landed on the lifeless body of his father, and the small boy's face reflected the uncertainty of what would come next. After that, what happened next is something everyone knows. Events unfolded with the inevitability of a preordained fate, as if every action was destined to follow its course, with no possibility of change. But what no one knew was that, while Taisu slept soundly, he was actually being tormented. Inside him lived countless people, their memories and powers intertwined in his mind like a constant echo from the past. Every night in his dreams, those figures pursued him, tormenting him with their presence, immersing him in an endless cycle of suffering. Their screams, their eyes full of resentment, and their unending pain trapped him in a nightmare from which he could not escape. And, as always, he would wake up startled, with his breath ragged from terror. Beside him, the healer calmly observed, her gaze conveying understanding and a certain sadness as she asked the same question. Another nightmare? She understood his suffering better than anyone. After all, she knew the burden he carried within, what it meant to harbor the mana and the memories of so many people inside him. She murmured that it must be painful, everything he had experienced, everything he still carried inside. Then, as if needing to understand the magnitude of his burden, she asked how many people lived inside him. But Taisu was exhausted, tired of it all, weary of the curse that relentlessly pursued him. With bitterness, he asked if she could seal that ability. The healer denied it and responded that she could only heal wounds, but not seal something like that. If he truly wanted to be rid of it, he would have to do it himself. Her response fell like an unbearable weight on Taisu's shoulders. Enraged, he cursed under his breath. If I could do it, I would have already. Desperate, he collapsed to his knees on the floor, clenching his fists in helplessness. It couldn't be possible. This couldn't end like this. They had to meet again. His words were not directed at the healer, but at Yehu, his friend who had been eliminated. With a heavy sigh, he closed his eyes and allowed the memories to envelop him. At first, he tried to revive Yehu, but it was all in vain. Every attempt failed, and his desperation grew until it consumed him completely. However, in his anguish, he found an idea. The intense gravity distorted space-time. That was the key. He didn't need to resurrect Yehu. What he really needed was time. And now, he was convinced that he could retrieve it. With this idea in mind, he began experimenting. For countless days and nights, he explored the limits of gravity's powers, testing over 14,000 combinations of abilities. In the process, he destroyed entire continents and came close to death on dozens of occasions. But his determination never wavered. In the end, he succeeded. He had managed to reverse time. However, there was a fatal problem. No matter how many times he tried or how much he perfected his technique, he always encountered the same unbreakable barrier. He couldn't go back to a point before he had thrown Jiyoung into the red portal. Every time he tried, he couldn't return before Jiyoung's death, no matter how much he tried or how many times he repeated the process. This was the question that tormented him endlessly.
Why?
What was the reason that limited him? In his desperation, he wondered if, by closing the red portal, the timeline had fractured, separating into different realities. If that was true, then it meant that he no longer had access to the exact point he needed to reach. However, after reflecting more calmly, he dismissed that idea. No, it couldn't be that. Something else had to be happening, something he still couldn't understand. Convinced that there must be a way, he began to use all the knowledge and resources at his disposal. He wouldn't let the laws of time stop him. But despite using every available tool, exhausting every possible strategy, and attempting to reverse time countless times, the result was always the same: an absolute failure. Each attempt led him to the same conclusion: he couldn't change what had already happened. And so, after countless failures and a desperation that threatened to consume him completely, he finally stopped trying. Now, in the present, his gaze fixed on Kang Jiyoung. He blamed him for everything with cold determination. He decided to sacrifice his own body, only to rebuild it immediately in front of his opponent. The hunter, driven by his fierce will to survive, refused to yield. He wouldn't die there, not without doing everything possible to eliminate him. With this thought in mind, he focused his energy and formed in his hand the power to return in time. He expanded it, increasing its reach, ensuring that his one chance would not be wasted. He couldn't allow his fate to end this way. The unleashed power enveloped Taisu, absorbing him into the flow of time. He returned 24 hours back. Realizing what he had accomplished, a smile crossed his face. He had returned. However, his joy was short-lived. Exactly 24 hours later, the result was the same. He lost again. This became his regression and death number 138. It is then that he returns once again. But this time, things are different. Even though everything follows its course, Taisu knew that Li Yumin already knew everything. So, he corners her and mentions Jihyung and Fail, something that leaves the woman confused. That's when he reveals that he can reverse time and that she has already told him all of this before. He questions her about who she is and how she knew in advance that everything would end this way. At first, the woman refuses to answer, but in the end, she decides to tell him the truth. She confesses that her power is to read and heal the flow of life. However, as she grew stronger, she began to perceive even greater flows, from the currents of water and air to the heartbeat of the Earth, the Moon, and the solar system. She can also feel the force that shapes the galaxies, everything that can be perceived in the world. In the end, she also saw the birth and destruction of the universe they live in. She confesses that she has seen the future and that Kang will appear once more. When that happens, the world will be destroyed. In the end, everything will be wiped out. That's why she simply lived without worries. However, she reveals that in the future she saw, it never happened that he could reverse time. The man, enraged, asks how he can trust her, to which Yuman questions whether there is any reason not to believe her. Besides, if she were lying, he would have already reversed time to torture her. He agrees with her and then asks for information on how to eliminate Kang Ji-hyun. But to his misfortune, she responds that it is not possible. Tae-soo, furious again at his failure, activates his power once more to go back in time. He recalls that when he lost for the second time, he noticed that Ji-hyun had already obtained the power of hell. The third time, he reflected that no matter how strong he was, he kept losing. Even with the ability to reverse time, the result was always the same. However, Tae-soo continued trying to eliminate Ji-hyun. But when he reached the 38th attempt, he concluded that it was impossible. He reflected that even when he went back in time to torture Yuman, she said nothing. She didn't utter a word. He questioned whether he really couldn't defeat Kang Ji-hyun. He decided to go back once more, exactly 6 years before, when he had thrown Tae-soo into the red portal, and the whole town had congratulated Tae-soo. He realized he was already at the limit of temporal inversion. He wondered if reviving his mother would stop Ji-hyun, but then he reflected that no matter what he did, he could not bring back someone who had already been erased. Even with Lee Yuman, it would be useless. He concluded that there was no other way. His only option was to eliminate Kang Ji-hyun. Tae-soo had eliminated everyone who had praised him. Years passed, and Tae-soo wiped out all the awakened in the world, absorbing their powers. When Kang Ji-hyun appeared, he closed all the blood gates. However, his opponent opened a portal himself and entered the battle. Using all the powers he had, Tae-soo erased him. But unfortunately, Ji-hyun was too strong, as he proceeded to regenerate and eliminate Tae-soo once again. The blue-haired one even tried to imprison him in the hardest diamond and send him to the deepest part of the earth to seal him there. But the monster managed to escape and eliminated Tae-soo again. Even when the awakened one destroyed the earth, Ji-hyun managed to traverse space to eliminate him once more. Even when Tae-soo threw the bone monster into a black hole, it managed to escape and eliminate the blue-haired one again. Tae-soo reflected that he had eliminated his mother in front of him and thrown him back into a red portal. He believed that as long as that didn't change, Ji-hyun would continue chasing and eliminating him. Immediately, he screamed at Kang Ji-hyun to stop, cursing, only to be destroyed once again. Thus, after reversing time thousands of times, Tae-soo realized something: eliminating Kang Ji-hyun was impossible. Then, we return to when Yuman said it was impossible to defeat the bone monster and that when he appeared, the world would be destroyed. And so, the truth was simply that. Tae-soo had lived carefree for 6 years, but when Ji-hyun appeared, he eliminated him to avoid dying. Thank you for making it this far. He continued reversing time, repeating the same situation over and over again. But suddenly one day he realized something. In the midst of his journey through time, Tae-soo realized something. Throughout all the time he had spent trying to eliminate Kang Ji-hyun, he had always acted alone. In a way, it made sense. Aside from his only friend, he had never gotten close to anyone. However, something unsettled him. He wondered what would happen if, this time, he was not alone. Determined to take a different path, instead of eliminating the awakened, he chose to tell the truth. He revealed to all the hunters in the world what had really happened, from the moment he himself had killed Kang Ji-hyun's mother to the countless times he had turned back time. Every detail was exposed without hesitation. After revealing everything, he begged for their help. But as expected, the hunters' gazes were cold and incredulous. No one believed him. No one supported him. However, Taisu did not give up. If rejection was his fate, then he would challenge it with perseverance. Again and again, he went back in time, seeking to change the outcome. Because in the past, those who had died unjustly by his hand, the unknown ones sacrificed without reason, the lives extinguished without even understanding why, each of them had their own story. Each of them had lived their own life. And at some point, every single one of them had had a conversation with Taisu. But he didn't just speak with the living. He also began to converse with the dark forces he had absorbed, a dialogue between himself and the power that resided within him. Time continued to flow. He wondered how many times he had gone back. He could no longer be sure. But finally, Taisu concluded his conversation with all the dark forces inside his body. And in that moment, something changed. Only after all that, or perhaps precisely at that moment, he dared to face his own past. He reflected on the cruelty of his actions and the horror of the consequences he had caused. Every memory was an unbearable weight, a burden that suffocated him with the certainty of his own responsibility. For that reason, precisely for that reason, he could not ignore it. He could not allow anyone else to suffer as he had suffered, to fall into the abyss of pain and despair. The anguish of losing a loved one drove him to seek redemption, to desire, even if in vain, to apologize to Kang Ji-hyun. But reality was relentless, and fate had not changed. Because when he appeared, Taisu was once again forced to fight him. However, unlike before, he was no longer alone. He had formed the World Alliance of Hunters, and with them, he was willing to face any threat, no matter the cost. But unfortunately, all that effort was a grave mistake. Taisu gave everything. He turned back time again and again, facing battle after battle, without hesitation. He memorized every one of Kang Ji-hyun's attacks, studying them in detail, trying to find a weakness, a crack, anything that could give him a chance. At the same time, he guided the hunters with precision, instructing them, ensuring that every movement was perfectly coordinated. He did everything possible so they could fight together in perfect synchronization. But no matter how many times he tried, no matter how many strategies he devised or how much he refined his movements, the result was always the same, a complete defeat. The healer's words echoed in his mind. Eliminating Kang Ji-hyun is impossible. And that made him wonder, after all this effort, had anything really changed? He apologized to everyone, but most of all, he apologized to Kang Ji-hyun. He was sorry. Sorry for everything he had done. Just at that moment, when he was about to be eliminated once again, something happened. A miracle. Or perhaps a punishment from fate. The one who had once abandoned him when he was just a child returned, to protect him. Right before her son's eyes, Ji-hyun, upon realizing who he had just killed, couldn't help but wonder if that woman was his mother. Only to laugh mockingly the next instant and say that he had almost invited her out, before slicing through her face without hesitation and splitting her in two. It all happened before Taisu's eyes. Unable to hold back, he screamed in fury, letting out all the rage he had been suppressing. Taisu remembers his mother's story. His father was a member of the National Assembly, his mother a judge, and she was born from a strategic marriage. That meant that, by those standards, his mother was obligated to be perfect from an early age. He acknowledged that it had been a hard life, but his mother never complained. She was flawless, the embodiment of perfection. Or, at least, that was what she believed. To her, that was the only truth in life. But she never realized the emotions she was repressing until a single imperfect choice changed everything. That was when love was born, or more precisely, during her first year of university. She fell in love with a senior at the faculty, and as a consequence of her actions, she became pregnant. That pregnancy changed everything. Her lover disappeared, and her family rejected her. That was the price of an imperfect choice, or at least, that was how she saw her eldest son, as the price she had paid. But in that moment, she understood something. If she was going to love, she had to do it perfectly as well. In the present, Taisu reflects. Throughout all his regressions, his mother had never appeared, not even once. That made him question why she was here now. Was it because she finally saw him as a perfect being? Or had she only come to have a perfect death? Kang Ji-hyung noticed that she looked like his mother and, almost amused, commented that he had almost flirted with her. At the same time, he impaled her with one of his bones and, in an instant, split her in two. Taisu screamed in rage, but deep inside, he felt something far worse: despair, fury, anguish. He had lost his mother right before his own eyes. In the whirlwind of emotions, he called Kang Ji-hyung, only to ask if this was how he had felt. Then, Taisu told Kang Ji-hyung everything: his countless deaths, his endless regressions, his final realization. But after saying it all, he confessed that he would no longer turn back time. He began to apologize. He had done something terrible. He regretted it. He regretted everything. Kang Ji-hyung asked him why he had done it. More than that, why had he done it to his mother? Taisu remained silent for a few seconds. Then he let out a faint laugh. He confessed that he didn't know. Those were his last words. Because in the next instant, his head was severed. As his head rolled across the ground, his final thought was clear.
This is really the end.
It has been such a long life. Too long. But Taisu returned. He was back at the starting point, the exact moment when he had thrown Kang Ji-hyung into the red portal. Confused, he wondered if he had come back again. With a smile, he concluded that he must have returned without realizing it, just before losing his life. Without wasting any time, he activated his diamond blade and, without hesitation, decapitated himself again. It was time to die, once more. But there he was, alive again. Confused, he grabbed a spear from someone nearby and struck his own face with fury. He wanted to make sure he wouldn't return again. But unfortunately, he did. In that instant, the realization struck him like lightning. What was this? He tried again. The result was the same. Over and over, every attempt brought him back to the same point. Frustration consumed him. He murmured in anger that this had to be a sick joke. Then, he shouted at the heavens in a desperate cry, asking what they wanted from him. He had only wished to reach a realization before dying. Was that not enough? Had he not died with dignity? Had he not done the right thing before surrendering? But time offered no answers. With one last burst of fury, he screamed to the sky that he didn't want to live anymore, that he only wished to die. His desire was so intense that, without hesitation, he self-destructed. And yet there he was again.
Alive.
In the same place. Cheers and applause surrounded him. They congratulated him for winning the battle. But he didn't hear any of it. He only had one question in his mind.
Why and how?
He screamed with all his strength, cursing the entire world. That was when Li Yumin approached and asked him to calm down. Seeing her, Taisu looked at her with desperation. He knew she had the answers. He begged her to tell him what was happening. Yumin observed him in silence before responding. She explained that throughout his infinite regressions, he had accumulated layers of magical power, energy that had been trapped in the timeline, twisting its causality. Time itself had closed in on him. Now, every time he died, he would return to the exact same point as before. No matter what he did from that moment on, in 6 years, he would inevitably die at Kang Ji-hyung's hands. She asked if he understood and told him that he would continue dying infinitely, eternally, forever. Her words echoed in his mind like an unbreakable curse. Taisu could barely whisper a response, still struggling to comprehend. But soon, his confusion turned into something deeper. Finally, his voice trembled as he asked the only question that truly mattered. What are you? Yumin smiled faintly. And then, she revealed the truth. Only Taisu understood the meaning of her words. He was speechless. Then, little by little, he started to laugh. It was not a laugh of joy, nor of relief. It was a bitter laugh, a laugh mixed with a curse upon the fate that had condemned him. Time continued its course. And what was destined to happen happened once more. Kang Ji-hyung eliminated Taisu. The world began to collapse. The bone monster gazed at the horizon, where his army faded into the distance, destroying everything in its path. And then someone approached him. Lee Yumin. Without warning, she wrapped him in a hug. Then she thanked him for his hard work. The ruler of hell, Pale, had destroyed the world over and over again. For an infinite amount of time, he had repeated the cycle of destruction so many times that he eventually forgot who he was or why he was doing it. All that remained was annihilation and emptiness. Until one day he felt something different. Loneliness. For the first time in his existence, he wished to create life. He tried countless times, but every attempt ended in failure. Over and over, without success. Until, in one final desperate act, he tore out his own heart. And from that, a life was born. At the same time, that life was his daughter. Kang Jihyung refused to believe the story. But Lee Yumin did not waver. She firmly stated that it was the truth. That child was her. As she spoke, she told more of her story. She said that she was human and, therefore, could not live in hell. From the moment she was born, she was abandoned. And while the outside world continued to close its gates, Earth was destroyed. That was 4 million years ago. Lee Yumin confessed that back then, all she wanted was to die. But because of Pale's heart, she could never find eternal rest. No matter where she went, no matter how many times she perished, she would always come back. The only despair greater than immortality was the possibility that Earth would be destroyed again. Because if that happened, she would never see her father again. Loneliness and hatred were her only companions for billions of years. No one could ever understand her because, for someone who had been alone for as long as she had, others had no meaning. However, when she loved, the loneliness of so many years vanished easily. She immersed herself in the happiness, even if it was fleeting. But as time passed, the people she loved ended up leaving this world. Even so, she did not give it much importance because she fell in love again and again. Then, when one day she had children, she saw them being born. She saw her children have grandchildren, and then her grandchildren continued their lineage. She learned to accept goodbyes because, with each loss, came the opportunity to meet new people. She confessed that over infinite time, she had loved countless times, but in the end, they all disappeared one after another. They fell under the weight of time, and she, unchanging, remained. Only she was left behind. Loneliness settled in her bones, enveloping her like a shadow that never disappeared. Although she managed to overcome it, the pain of billions of years remained latent and immortal. She could no longer bear it, and at that moment, for the first time, she understood her father. She understood why he had been willing to tear out his heart. It was none other than a sacrifice. It was the only way to erase the weight of loneliness. It was at that instant that her father's heart showed her the future, a single future, one in which she could see her father again. Back in the present, she revealed what she knew. In a distant future, the Bloodgate uprising would break out, and the catalyst for everything would be Kang Jihyung. The young man, astonished, questioned her words. He wanted to know what she was talking about. She responded calmly. The mere fact that he had overcome the transformation into a monster by himself and escaped from hell made him an anomaly, a future that only he could reach, one among multiple possible futures. Jihyung felt a chill run down his spine. With a trembling voice, he asked if she had been using him. He couldn't believe it, but then doubt consumed him. He wanted to know more. Had she used his father as well? His mother? Had everything been part of her plan? Lee Yumin did not hesitate. She nodded firmly. Jihyung clenched his teeth. His rage exploded, and without hesitation, he prepared to eliminate her. But before he could do anything, she gently touched his forehead. In an instant, his bone armor crumbled, turning to dust. Unfazed, Lee Yumin spoke, saying that the future she saw only reached that point. Jihyung cursed her, but his body did not move. His anger was useless. He added that everything was her fault, but Yumin continued, "As compensation, I gave Tizu the most tragic death." She explained that she had trapped him in a time loop, condemned to die and revive infinitely at her hands. Tizu would eventually understand the reason for her decision. Then, with chilling calmness, she asked him not to worry. Everything would end soon. She knew that only in the same dimension as her father could she die, and if she disappeared, her father would too. That was the day she understood Bio's loneliness, and she made her decision. She would see her father again, and she would destroy the world. Then, she would use her own death to end him as well. As she spoke, she began to extract her heart because only then would the cycle of loneliness end. For a moment, her thoughts drifted to Jihyun. Perhaps that was what he needed as well because, although he had endured unbearable pain for his mother, he had never found rest. What he felt for her was not love, it was only loneliness. Love, in the end, was nothing more than a cruel illusion to fill the voids in the heart. It could make one forget loneliness, but it also etched it even more deeply into the soul. Love was nothing more than a curse, and now everything had to come to an end. Extracting the heart and destroying it. After everything, the woman, her voice calm and almost detached, asked her father if he was angry. Pale, who had been silently observing her, took a deep breath before meeting her gaze. His gaze were steady, serene, yet the weight of centuries seemed to press upon them. He looked at her, and then, in a voice that was both firm and gentle, he responded, not with anger, but with a question of his own. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, his tone laced with an unspoken understanding. He then said something that no one could ever doubt, not in his heart. "You are my daughter, my other half. I could never be angry with you." Jihyun, watching from a distance, stood frozen in disbelief. His mind swirled with confusion, pain, and frustration. Every part of him screamed to understand, but he couldn't. One question echoed through his head, growing louder with each passing second. What are they doing? Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. He understood. She was living a life that wasn't hers, a life that had erased everything: her mother, her father, her past. Now, she was standing on the precipice, ready to destroy everything that was left. Could it really be true? Jihyun thought. Was this her plan?
To end it all?
To erase everyone? All because she felt alone? The thought struck him like a physical blow. The very idea was unbearable. He clenched his teeth, his fists trembling with rage. This is madness, he thought. It's all nonsense. His mind drifted back to the time when Pale had saved him, when he had already lost his humanity. Even then, Pale had shown him compassion. It was Pale's heart that had given him the opportunity to save his mother. He also remembered Lucas' words. Those words still burned in his mind, a reminder of the hope he had been given. Never lose faith, no matter what. And then it clicked. It all became clear in an instant. If this was his fate, if this was the point where everything came to an end, then he would fight for it, fight for the chance to see his mother again. He wanted Pale's power, and he would not hesitate to claim it, no matter the consequences. This ends now, he thought. I won't let it be this way. Without a second thought, without hesitation, Jihyun leapt into action. He dove towards the bone monster, sinking his teeth into its heart with a brutal, savage determination. There was no turning back. He was resolute, his body, mind, and soul focused on nothing but that single act. The woman, witnessing this, looked at him with a mixture of surprise and disdain. Her lips curled into a sneer. "You're nothing but a mere human now," she said, almost pityingly. "There's no way you can absorb Pale's power. You're too weak." But in that very moment, the world around them began to change. The sky, once lifeless and gray, erupted into a brilliant crimson. A flash of red light consumed everything, filling the air with energy. In that blinding moment, the entire landscape seemed to transform in an instant. It was as if the very essence of the world had shifted. And there, in the center of it all, Jihyun, now completely immersed in Pale's power, began to absorb it fully. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief, her voice trembling with shock. "This is absurd," she shouted, her mind struggling to comprehend the impossible. "How can this be? Don't you understand? She repeated the words she had once believed in. The only way to end loneliness is today. She said them with such conviction, but Ji-hyun's resolve remained unshaken. I will see my mother again, Ji-hyun declared firmly, his voice echoing with a strength he never thought possible. It was as though his very soul had been reignited, his determination unbreakable. As the words left his mouth, the woman studied him. Her eyes narrowed, and it was then that she understood. He wasn't just absorbing the power. He was transforming, becoming something greater, something unstoppable. The truth settled in her mind like a weight she couldn't ignore. This was fate. This was destiny. In that single moment, the woman was consumed by the very power she had once sought to control. A burst of light exploded where they stood, and the earth began to tremble violently beneath their feet. The ground cracked open, and the once vibrant planet began to break apart, piece by piece. It was as though the very fabric of existence was unraveling. The sky, now ablaze with fiery red light, was a harbinger of the destruction that had only just begun. The explosion sent shockwaves rippling through the cosmos, spreading outward in all directions. It was a force so great that it seemed to reshape the very nature of reality itself. The planet, once teeming with life, was now nothing more than a shattered husk, floating in the vast expanse of space. But in the wake of that devastation, something remarkable happened. The energy of the explosion illuminated the endless darkness of space, casting a brilliant glow across the void. It was as if a new star had been born, one among countless others that had once been worlds. But this was not the end. Ji-hyun still remained. His body, now little more than bones, drifted aimlessly through the emptiness of space. The silence was deafening. And yet, in that stillness, Ji-hyun looked at himself, at the fragments of his existence that remained. His thoughts were fractured, broken, like the world he had just witnessed fall apart. Two questions swirled in his mind. What had he been doing? And who was he? Suddenly, a spark of memory flickered. He activated his powers, and as he did, his name echoed in the silence. He spoke it aloud. I am the administrator of hell. Without a second thought, he stepped into the red portal he had left open, knowing what was to come next. He had returned to the beginning. The story of Pale was one that had been told countless times, one that spanned an unimaginable expanse of time. Pale had spent countless eons, destroying worlds over and over, only to forget the reason behind it all. Destruction was his only constant, the only thing he knew. Yet, somewhere along the way, something had shifted. An emptiness had crept into his soul, a sense of loss, of longing. And then loneliness. It overwhelmed him. Pale had tried time and again to create life, but each attempt ended in failure. Until, finally, drained and broken, he had torn out his own heart. In that desperate act, he had created his clone, his daughter. It was a story that seemed to repeat itself. A cycle of destruction and creation, over and over. An endless loop of time, where the end was never truly the end, but merely the beginning of a new reality. One where everything had already happened. But who could truly know for sure? After all, it was Pale who had caused the cracks in the first place. Or at least, that's what he remembered.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads. See you in the next one. Take care.